Hey guys, this is God Harry. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see second part, what if Harry awakened godly power against Voldemort. Here is short summary. When a surprising gift from Uncle Vernon gives Harry a powerful edge, he finds himself armed with a new way to challenge Voldemort. Will this unexpected tool turn the tide in his fight against the Dark Lord? But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Just a bit further, the instructor encouraged. You can see the barracks now, right ahead. Every one of Neville's sore muscles began to ease up, the pounding in his head went down, the burn in his eyes disappeared, and the boy felt a rush of energy, more than enough to take him through the last stretch. Where are we going? Neville asked as they marched past what was supposed to be the end point. Commander thought it would be best to add a few more clicks on the end of the march, the instructor explained. Says that we need to do as much as is required and more. Harry, Neville was close to tears. A few seconds before he had been as high as he had ever been in his life, and now it had all been taken away. You all right, sir? The instructor asked quietly. He hated to see the young gentleman break, but better now than in the heat of combat. Bwahahaha. Neville started laughing. It's frigging brilliant. Pick up the pace, Sergeant. Neville ordered. I got plans later tonight and I'm not going to be happy if I have to change them because you dawdled. Right you are, sir, the instructor said with a grin. How far are we going? Neville asked with a grin. 2 more kilometers, sir, the instructor replied. Make it 4, Neville said quickly. And tell the men that if we finish before 5 then I'm good for the first round. Hear that, lads, the instructor called out. Let's get a move on. Glad you're back, sir, Smythe greeted Harry at the door. We've had an incident that you need to take care of. What happened? Harry asked quickly. 4 young hoodlums jumped one of the men. Any injuries? Harry asked with a frown. Few broken bones, Smythe said with a grin. They were just kids, so he didn't get too rough. What do you need me to do? Just walk down to the station and see if you can't smooth everything out, sir, Smythe suggested. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. Right, Harry agreed. Who was involved? McLean, sir, Smythe said with a wince. And all he did was break bones. Like I said, sir, Smythe said. They were just kids. I'll be back as soon as I can, Harry said with a sigh. Where's McLean? Inside, sir. Call him out unless you need him for something else, Harry said with a grin. May I ask why, sir? I'm going to have him apologize to those misguided young men for being so rough with them, Harry said with a laugh. Don't think he'll like that, sir, Smythe said with a grin. I think he'll see the humor if I explain it right, Harry said. All I gotta do is point out that it'll be more of a taunt if he explains that he didn't realize that they were so fragile. I think you're right, sir, Smythe agreed. But just to be safe, why don't you let me explain it to him? If you wish, Harry agreed. You want to tag along, Hermione? I've got some reading I'd like to catch up on, Hermione demurred. But thanks for the offer. Have fun then, Harry said with a shrug. Harry waited outside while Smythe and Hermione went into the old building to get McLean. One old man against a group of young toughs, Harry muttered to himself. Should have been 2 of them, least then I could tell the joke. You wanted me to tender my apologies to the young miscreants, sir, McLean said with a smile. I wanted you to explain that you thought they'd be tougher, Harry said with a grin. Rather you didn't show too much remorse. I think I know just how to handle things, sir, McLean agreed. It took them a few minutes to reach the police station. What can I do for you? The constable squinted at Harry's identification. Major. One of my men was involved in a scuffle with a group of misguided boys, Harry replied calmly. And he feels just terrible that he harmed them so much. Told me he wanted to explain that he didn't know that they'd be so weak and that he would have gone even easier on them if he'd known. Really? The Bobby asked with a grin. Why don't you 2 come in? And why don't I make some tea for the Major while you go? Apologize, the Bobby suggested. Right, McLean agreed. Course. The constable began. To protect the young gentleman in the cell, I'm going to have several men watching the proceedings. Sounds sensible, McLean agreed. You might wish to record it all with a camera too, just to be safe. We might at that, the man agreed. Give me a minute to set things up. After a few minutes, a cup of tea arrived for Harry and a guide arrived for McLean. This way, Sergeant, the policeman said. The policeman led McLean to a small cell holding a badly beaten street gang. Wanted to apologize to you boys, McLean began. Didn't think you lot would be so fragile. You saying we're weak, old man? One of the toughs growled. Guess I am, McLean agreed. Surprised the hell out of me to find out how weak you were. Why you? Sit down, the leader of the gang ordered. How'd you get so strong? Few years in the army'll toughen anyone up, McLean explained. Not sure if they'll take you though. Why not? Your gang did get beaten by one old man, McLean said slyly. Not sure if you could pass the standards, there's also the matter of a criminal record. What about it? Not sure if they're taking folks with those these days, McLean said with a sigh. All else fails, I guess you could join the French. Be good for them to have a few more of our boys in their legion, even boys as weak as you lot must be better than their usual recruits. Why you? We'll think about it, the leader interrupted again. Thanks, old man. You boys stay out of trouble, McLean called over his shoulder as he walked out. Well, Harry asked. Went rather well, sir, McLean replied. They're good boys, couple of them anyway. Let's get back then, Harry suggested. Unless you have something you need to do. No, sir, McLean said quickly. Harry and McLean left the police station and were halfway back when they were met by a nervous-looking private. Sergeant Major needs to see you, sir, the private said quickly. Let's go, Harry agreed. They followed the man to his sergeant major. What is it now? Harry asked with a groan. If it wasn't one thing it was another. The Navy, sir, Smythe said with a wince. And the Marines, some artillery and engineers mixed in too. I was hoping for a bit more detail, Sergeant Major, Harry said flatly. Most of the men here came from the infantry, Smythe explained. With a bit of cavalry and, well, some special service units mixed in for flavor. Go on, Harry said with a nod. The others found out what you're doing here and they want in, Smythe said with a frown. I know the bootnecks and I suspect that the others aren't willing to change colors, so I'm not sure what to do, sir. Enlist them into their branch, Harry ordered. But tell them, better yet, take me to them. Yes, sir, Smythe agreed quickly. Harry followed the old NCO into one of the large meeting room where he found an assortment of old men waiting. At ease, Harry called out as he entered the room. I understand that you men have something to talk with me about. We want in, an older man in a black uniform said with a frown. Who are you? Harry turned to look at the man. Sergeant Michael O'Day, Royal Artillery. Done, Harry agreed. I can enlist anyone back into the army, any artillery and engineers can come in immediately. What about the rest of us? One of the other old men yelled out. I'm going to have to talk to higher about that, Harry said with a frown. So it may take some time to get approved. Who'd be the commanding officer? One of the other men asked quietly. Sorry, sir. Sergeant Major Hart. Marine Commandos. Me, Harry said flatly. Unless they decide to assign someone else. I don't have a problem with that, sir, the old Marine said with a smile. Except the fact that as an army officer, well, no offense, sir, but you don't know how to use Marines the way they need to be used. Many of the other men muttered in agreement. Then teach me, Harry said with a shrug. I'm always willing to learn if I have the time. I think we can all agree to that, sir, Hart said with a smile. Pleasure to take the Queen's shilling again. Welcome home, Harry said with a grin. Give the clerk a list of personnel and their specialties and we'll see if we can't find a place for everyone. I want the senior engineers to meet with me in. Harry glanced at the clock. 2 hours, 7 o'clock. Any questions? Harry glanced around. Then I'm going to get something to eat. The sergeant major's lovely granddaughter is in your office, sir. McLean's comment sparked a round of laughter. Thank you, Sergeant, Harry said with as much dignity as he could muster. I always appreciate it when my subordinates anticipate my potential needs. Well, sir, I figured that you'd want to. Thanks again, Sergeant, Harry interrupted. I'm sure we all get the idea. With as much dignity as he could muster, Harry walked out of the room and up to his office. "Hey Harry," Hermione said without looking up from her book. "What are you reading?" "I'm Air in the Ticky Ulster and A Broken Billycock, at A Layan, on the Sergeant I Don, Tino a Gun from a Bat." Hermione read, Back to the Army Again, by Rudyard Kipling. "My grandfather gave me a collection of his poems, said it was something I'd have to learn if I was going to, never mind." "Mind if I read it?" "He suggested that you might want to," Hermione said. "Brought another copy for you." "Thanks Hermione," Harry said. "Now put down the book, I'd rather not have to explain to your mother that you've been skipping meals." "What?" Hermione looked up and noticed the trays in front of her for the first time. "Eat," Harry commanded. "Fine." Hermione propped the book up so she could still read as she chewed. "How was your trip to the police station?" "Amusing," Harry replied. "For me and the cops." "Good. What was all the commotion downstairs?" "New recruits," Harry explained. "Jealous that the Navy and the Marines weren't invited to the party." "So you've got more soldiers now?" "No, I've got sailors and Marines," Harry said with a laugh. None of them were willing to change branches. Harry noticed Hermione's look of confusion and decided to explain. "Would you be willing to switch houses?" "Oh," Hermione nodded. "I guess that makes sense." "Let me see your fingernails," Neville growled. "Good. You, get a fresh shave. I do not want anyone that doesn't look their best by the time of the inspection. Pity the poor bastard that makes us look bad during the inspection." "Ease up a bit Mr. Longbottom," one of the instructors said calmly. "You've got sergeants to kick ass, your job is to make plans." "I'm a cadet sergeant at the moment," Neville said with a smile. "And now you're the cadet captain," the instructor said with a smile. "Congratulations." "Thanks," Neville replied with a smile. "Between the two of us, sir," the old NCO leaned in to whisper something. "You could do with a shave yourself, sir," he whispered. "Wah." Neville automatically reached up to rub his chin. "Bit of fuzz," he said with a delighted laugh. "Gran would be so proud." "I'll take care of things from here," the instructor continued. "You get yourself ready and I'll take care of them." "Thank you, Sergeant," Neville said. "I'll be back 15 minutes before the inspection to make sure everything is going smooth." "I'll have them ready by then," the instructor agreed. Harry was flipping through the book of poetry when he heard a knock on the door. "Enter. Sergeant Major Bly, Royal Engineers." One of the two men introduced himself. "Chief Petty Officer Hook," the other man said. "Not sure I'm the sort of engineer you were expecting, but I might be useful." "What sort of engineer are you?" Harry asked quickly. "I kept ships from falling apart," Hook explained. "I can keep most engines running and I can make or repair any parts that they might need." "Have a seat," Harry waved. "Both of you, may I ask why you called us up here, sir?" Sergeant Major Bly asked. "The mod gave me a small base that hasn't been used for quite a while," Harry said. "It comes with a small village that got annexed by the government during the war." "You want us to make everything livable again, sir?" Bly asked. "And update what you can," Harry agreed. "How bad is it, sir?" "A few of the buildings are in use at the moment, so it can't be too bad," Harry said. "But I don't know, I haven't had a chance to make a visit yet. I am going to be there in..." Harry glanced at the clock. "An hour for an inspection if you'd like to come along." "I would, sir," Bly replied. "Patrick, I'd like to come along too if I may, sir," Hook said. "Excellent," Harry said. "Make any preparations you need and join me here in 45 minutes." "Yes, sir," Bly agreed. "Wouldn't miss it, sir," Hook said. "Dismissed." "Didn't see the need to introduce me?" Hermione asked after the two men had gone. "Didn't see the need to interrupt your reading," Harry said quickly. Hermione considered his reply for a few moments. "Okay, I'm willing to accept that. Mind if I tag along? I haven't seen Neville in a while." "Sure," Harry agreed. "Just let me put on something a bit more flattering," Hermione said. "Huh, just because I don't normally choose to dress up, doesn't mean I don't know how," Hermione replied. "It also doesn't mean I won't if the situation requires it. According to my grandfather, this is a big thing for Neville and the others." "Fine," Harry said. "You have 45 minutes. I'll be right back," Hermione agreed. Harry watched his friend go and exhaled. Big thing, huh? Well, I guess it can't hurt to dress up a little. Neville walked slowly up and down each row of assembled men, desperately looking for any flaw that could make the unit look bad in front of their commanding officer. Well, sir, the NCO at his side asked. We might get through this without a scratch, Neville said with a slow nod. Have them fall back into the barracks until you get the word that the commander has arrived. You may have them partly disrobe if you believe that it will make them more comfortable. Dismissed. Neville took one last look around before walking into the CQ area. Afternoon, sir, the charge of quarters said as he hopped to attention. At ease, Neville said automatically. We have a lookout ready to spot the major. Yes, sir, the CQ agreed. Good, Neville replied. I'll be doing paperwork in the office. Notify both the instructors and I immediately after the major arrives. Yes, sir. The group assembled in Harry's office and he gave them all a once-over before he spoke. First thing we need to do is make a quick inspection of the training battalion, which is about the size of a light company. Then I want you men to give the base a look over to get an idea of what needs to be done to get it running again. Clear, sir, Bly and Hook replied. Good, follow me. Harry led the two men down to the basement. We've got an agreement with the goblins. Part of it is a way to get from one place to the other through a couple connected doors. Sounds useful, sir, Hook commented. Do these doors have to stay still or can they be moved? Not sure, Harry admitted. It's another thing I've got to look into. Could be important, sir, Bly agreed. I'll add it to the list, Harry sighed. You could do that, Hook said. Or you could delegate it to one of us. Look into it, Harry ordered as the three men walked through the door and walked out into an old brick building. This doesn't look so bad, Bly said. If they're all like this then it'll be a snap to get this place up again. I also want the town to be made habitable again, Harry said. With every modern convince, or at least the magical equivalent. You get us men to do the spell work and we'll have everything ready for you, sir, Bly said quickly. Get in contact with Ms. Blake, Harry said. She's in charge of coordinating our magical section. Time to get your game face on, boss, Hook said. I just noticed one of their lookouts. Lookouts. Smart officer will post lookouts to warn him when the brass is approaching, Hook explained. Gives him a bit of time to make sure everything is ready for you. Think we should slow down a bit? Harry asked. If he doesn't have everything ready by the time you get there then he doesn't deserve more time, Bly said with a grin. Be a good lesson for him. Right, Harry agreed. Straighten up, gentlemen. Make sure they have examples to aspire to. Aye, sir. Yes, sir. The three men walked onto the parade ground just in time to see Neville call his men to attention. All present and accounted for, sir, Neville said with a salute. Open them up, Harry said as he returned the salute. Open ranks, Neville called the preparatory command. March. Like a well-oiled machine, the first rank took 2 steps forward, the second took 1, the third took none, and the fourth took 1 back. Looking good, Neville, Harry whispered out of the corner of his mouth. Without a further word, Harry walked up to the first man in the first rank. Name. Smith, James B., sir, the man said loudly. Where are you from, soldier? Birmingham, sir. Wife, kids? None, sir. What is the rate of fire for the L2A3? 550 rounds cyclic, Smith chanted. Approximately 40 on burst. Good man, Harry said with a smile. Harry repeated the procedure with each man in the company, first asking a few personal questions and then some arcane bit of military trivia. Well, Neville whispered as they walked back to the front of the formation. Sergeant Major, look good to me, sir, Bly said, especially considering the fact that they're trainees. Chief, Harry turned to his other NCO. They look good to me, sir, Hook agreed. Good, Harry said. Close them up, Neville. Neville stood at attention and faced the formation. Close ranks, march. The new officer did nothing to suppress the jolt of adrenaline he got when the men moved back into position. Men, I'm going to be expecting a lot out of you. But only because our mission is of the greatest importance. Harry called out. You will soon be taking part in a great thing, the restoration of peace and democracy to an oppressed people. This mission more than any other should remind you all the importance of our chosen profession. Harry took a slow look around. Standing at attention is a bitch, so I'll make this short. It's the soldier that protects the freedoms that civilians take for granted and in doing so is often asked to sacrifice his own. Never forget that these sacrifices will always be remembered, if even by just a chosen few. Men, when the time comes, make your country proud. The cheer was deafening and Harry had a hard time keeping his face impassive. Lieutenant, take charge of your men. Company, Neville called out. Dismissed. Good job with them, Neville, Harry said quietly to his friend. You have 3 days before I need you. Have everyone go home to see their families. Yes, sir, Neville agreed. You too, Harry said calmly. Visit your gran. Make sure she knows you care about her. Hell, for that matter, visit any young witches that might have struck your family. I will, Harry, Neville agreed. What's the mission? We're taking the war to them, Harry said simply. I don't want them to think that anywhere is safe or that they can run from me. Right, Neville's voice hardened. If you'll excuse me, sir. Later, Neville. Buildings don't look too bad, sir, Bly said after Neville was out of sight. Most of them anyway. Good, Harry said. I'm also going to need you to construct an earthen fortification out in the moors. May I ask why, sir? Building a better mousetrap, Harry replied. Rig it to explode and surround it with mines. Be sure to have several of those goblin doors put in and rig them to explode too. I understand, sir, Bly said with a nod. Harry cut off when he noticed McLean waiting in the distance. Anything else, gentlemen? No, sir. Not at the moment, sir. Then if you'll excuse me, Harry said with a sigh. McLean looks like he has something that he can't wait to tell me about. Makes me glad. All I have to do is poke around several dangerous and condemned buildings, Bly. Got that right, Hook. Harry walked away from the two grinning men and up to McLean. You have the look of a man that's incredibly constipated, Harry said. That or one that's having trouble concealing gales of laughter. Could we say it's the first, sir? What is it? Miss Granger has a surprise for you, sir, McLean said with a grimace. What kind of surprise? Harry demanded. A good surprise, or a surprise that will be the source of much merriment at my expense? The later, I'm afraid, sir. That's what I suspected. Refresh my memory, Sergeant, Harry said. What do the regs say about men laughing at their commanding officer? Well, sir, McLean began. If a soldier laughs at his commander and no one's around to hear it, did they do anything wrong? You've been spending way too much time around Hermione, Harry laughed. Finally forgave me for the hand-to-hand lessons, McLean admitted with a blush. Let's get this over with. Right you are, sir. Harry followed the strangely silent McLean back to his office. Right in there, sir. You may return to your duties, Sergeant, Harry said without looking over. I'm sure you have quite a few things you need to see done. We're all good at the moment, sir, McLean said with a grin. Was that a request for me to find some then? Harry asked mildly. Suppose we could always fill sandbags or something, sir, McLean said with a grin. As troops love doing that, I'll be on my way then, sir. Good. Harry waited until the hall was empty and then took several calming breaths before opening the door. I'm back, Dobby. Hello, Major Harry Potter, sir, the house elf said happily. Why are you wearing that uniform? Dobby enlisted, Hermione said proudly. Private Dobby, Major Harry Potter, sir, Dobby said proudly. Major Harry Potter, sir's Batman. I thought you said you hated forcing house elves to work. Harry accused his friend. Dobby is getting paid and wears a uniform, Hermione said smugly. Dobby had to take a pay raise and more vacation time, the elf said mournfully. But Dobby thinks it is worth it to serve the great Major Harry Potter, sir, commander of the 9050 Rifles. Glad to have you with us, Dobby, Harry said. This didn't look like something he was going to win, so it was best to just go with the flow. Thank you, Major Harry Potter, sir. Dobby looked ready to burst into tears. Dismissed. Yes, Major Harry Potter, sir. The little elf snapped off a salute and disappeared. I was thinking that we could get all elves into. Why don't we deal with that later? Harry suggested. For now, I'd like to get a few reporters together to witness something I've got planned. When do you need them? Hermione said quickly. Not for a few days, Harry replied. For the moment, I'd just like to get a list together. News article below inspired me to write a bit more. Just as that a 70-year-old retired U.S. military killed a mugger in self-defense. Seattle P. Translated for ff.net below. The two friends spent the morning practicing with Tonks and after a rather humiliating defeat, decided to call it a day. Well, Harry said with a grin. What do you want to do now? You don't have anything you need to do. Hermione asked quickly. Nothing much, Harry said. I'd like to inspect the men I have in the alley, but other than that. Why don't we get some ice cream? Hermione asked quickly. And I can get some books while you're busy. Sounds good, Harry agreed. Do you want to join us, Tonks? Hermione suddenly remembered the third person in the room. I'd love to, Tonks said with a smirk at the look on Hermione's face. But I can't, I have to be on duty today. The first years are starting to trickle in and Madam Bones doesn't want anything to happen. I'll tell the men to keep their eyes open, Harry said. Thanks, Tonks. No problem, Harry, the Auror replied. Have fun, you two. We will, Hermione said. Shall we? Harry offered his arm. We shall, Hermione agreed. Let's go, Harry. Ignoring the grins on the soldiers' faces, the two friends strolled out of the building into the leaky cauldron. Afternoon, Harry, Hermione, Tom said as they walked through the door. Hello, Tom, Hermione said. How are you doing today? Can't complain, Tom replied. Headed to the alley. Yes, we are, Harry said. Then I won't keep you. Take care, you two. We will, Tom, Hermione agreed. You wanna get some ice cream first, Harry? Sure, Harry agreed. Just let me whisper something to the men at the entrance and we can go. Okay. They walked out the back of the tavern and were met by a pair of men. Good afternoon, Major Potter, the men said with a salute. Good afternoon, Harry said as he returned the salute. Bones is worried that the Tangos might try something when the new Hogwarts students, so keep your eyes open. Yes, sir, the men agreed. Do you want us to pass it along? Yes, Harry agreed. Carry on. Yes, sir. Milady, shall we continue? We shall. The pair made their way to Fortescue's shop and took seats at their table. Good to see you two here again, Fortescue said as he rushed to their table. Would you like me to bring out your usual or would you like something else? The usual is fine, Hermione said with a smile. Thank you. Right away then, Fortescue said quickly. It's good to have you two in the shop again. So do you really think there's going to be a Death Eater attack? I think it's possible, Harry said. Their only tactic is to spread as much terror as possible. Killing a few first years, especially Muggle-born first years, would make sense. I guess so, Hermione agreed. Do you think the war will ever be over? I believe so, Harry said. Like I said, their only tactic is to spread terror. They don't have enough people or professionalism to do anything else. You called for me, the Death Eater asked. Yes, Lucius agreed. Rejoice. Our Lord has chosen to grant you your fondest desire. Who does he want me to kill? Nits make lice, Lucius said with a grin. Kill as many Muggle-born as you can, especially the first years. What about the blood traitors? Concentrate on the children, Lucius said after a moment of thought. The younger the better, everything else is a bonus. Very well, the Death Eater agreed. May I take reinforcements? Take 2 men with you. Lucius began. Only 2. We're sending a few more teams, Lucius explained. Meet you in the bookstore when you're done, Hermione asked hopefully. Okay, Harry agreed. I'll join you soon. Bye, Harry, Hermione said as she walked away. Mundy, Harry ordered. I'll keep an eye on her, sir, Mundy agreed. Mundy shadowed the young girl as she walked up the street and watched as she walked into her favorite shop. Hermione came through the door and froze at the scene she came upon. 3 Death Eaters had gathered everyone in the shop and were in the process of hexing the owner. Look what we have here. One of the Death Eaters laughed. Potter's mud-blood bitch. Wonder how long she'll be able to entertain us before her mind shatters. Another added. Hermione's mind went to the hours of practice she'd put in and she reflexively drew her pistol and shot the first Death Eater in the stomach. She then swiveled and shot the man next to him first through the jaw and then through the forehead. Some part of her mind noted several distant cracks as the third man's head seemed to disappear. The world rushed back and Hermione stared down at what she'd done in horror. Mundy sighed in annoyance when Hermione walked into the shop ahead of him. Granted, the chances were that she'd be safe for the 30 seconds it took for him to join her in the shop. It still bothered his sense of professionalism. 3 gunshots caused him to revise his opinion and he broke into a run. Mundy drew as he crashed through the door, frantically looking for his charge. Avenue. The Death Eater's incantation cut off as Mundy gave him 2 to the chest and 1 to the head. Another round found its way into the screaming Death Eater on the ground. "Are you all right, Ms. Granger?" Mundy elbowed his way through the crowd. "Ms. Granger." Hermione didn't answer and her eyes remained locked on the 3 bodies. "I did this," the girl whispered. "How are things going, McLean?" Harry asked as the 2 walked up the alley. "Been quiet, sir," McLean replied. "If every day was like this." "You hear that, sir?" "Gunshots," Harry agreed as he began running towards the sound. Harry arrived in the bookstore and took everything in with a glance. "Mundy, what happened?" "Death Eaters, sir," Mundy said. "Ms. Granger took the first 2 and I got the last one." She's not taking it so well, sir." Harry slowly reached over and plucked the pistol out of Hermione's trembling fingers. "It's all right," Harry said gently. "You only did what you had to do to protect yourself." "I just killed someone," Hermione wailed. "How do you think I feel?" "How am I supposed to feel?" The girl collapsed into Harry's arms and began sobbing. "It's okay," Harry tried to comfort his friend. "Let it all out." "Harry," Hermione sobbed. "McLean," Harry's voice firmed. "I want the alley flooded. Get as many men here as you can to make sure there aren't more of them." "Yes, sir," McLean agreed. "Sir, if I may suggest something?" Mundy asked. "Speak." "You should get Ms. Granger someplace quiet," Mundy said gently. "To let her calm down." "Do it, sir," McLean agreed. "We can take care of things here." "I'll be in my room at the Cauldron," Harry said reluctantly. "Get me if anyone so much as thinks something is going to happen." "Yes, sir," McLean agreed. "Mundy, go with them." "Right, McLean." Harry got his friend back to his room and did his best to comfort her until she fell asleep, and after removing her shoes and loosening her clothing to make her more comfortable, crept out of the room. "She okay, sir?" Smythe asked in concern. "Just a little shook up," Harry replied. "Killing a man shouldn't be easy," Smythe muttered. The old man's eyes unfocused and he looked like he was in another place. "It should never be easy." "You're right," Harry agreed. "It shouldn't. Meaning no offense to you, sir," Smythe said quickly. "Forget it," Harry said calmly. "I've never been normal, why should this be any different?" "So what now, sir? Were there any other attacks?" "2 more attempts, sir. Prisoners. The men weren't in any mood to take them after the attack on Hermione," Smythe replied. "Try not to let that attitude continue," Harry said slowly. "I'm going to need a few for the trials, not to mention the information they can give." "Trials? We're going to break the insurgency and then we're going to have a trial," Harry explained. "We're going to keep everything above board, and then we're hang them by the numbers." "Yes, sir," Smythe agreed woodenly. "You remember what I said about breaking the wizarding world?" "Yes, sir. This is part of it," Harry said to the expressionless NCO. "We need legitimacy if what we set up is going to last." "I understand, sir," Smythe said slowly. "But you'll understand if I say it isn't as satisfying as putting a bullet in myself." "I know, Sergeant Major," Harry said. "I know." "Albus," Minerva called out as she rushed into the headmaster's office. "There's been an attack on Diagon Alley. Bones was right, they're going after the children." "How many?" Dumbledore asked tightly. 4 in St. Mungo's, McGonagall said with a relieved smile. "But we might not be so lucky next time." "Why so few?" Dumbledore asked quickly. "How did we get so lucky?" "Ms. Granger managed to stop the first group and Mr. Potter's men took care of the rest," Minerva said with a grin. "Albus, what would have happened if they weren't there?" "I don't know, Minerva," Albus replied. "But it's lucky they managed to drive them off." "Drive them off?" Minerva blinked. "Albus, they weren't driven off. They were killed. Mr. Potter's men didn't take prisoners, and from the reports I've gotten, neither does Ms. Granger." "Minerva." Albus was scandalized. "How could you take such joy in anyone's death?" They were Death Eaters, Albus, Minerva replied. To compound matters, they tried to harm my children. Children that had done nothing wrong, true innocence. Yes, but isn't it a little? Let the punishment fit the crime, McGonagall interrupted. What? Voldemort asked calmly. Dead, my lord, Lucius repeated himself. All dead. How did this happen? Potter's men, Lucius explained. Along with every Auror the Ministry could gather. I see, the Dark Lord growled. Tell me, Lucius, how do you suppose we should address this insult? Potter can't be everywhere, Lucius said with a shrug. Find a few isolated Muggle homes and give the families to the men for a bit of entertainment. Send up the mark when we're done along with a message for Potter. Very good, Voldemort agreed. See to it. Yes, my lord, Lucius agreed. I want an interview with Potter on the front page tomorrow, the editor of the Prophet screamed. I don't care how you get it. Might take making nice with the Lovegoods, one of the reporters said with a wince. After what we printed last year. That was yesterday, the editor said with a dismissive wave. I'm sure he's forgotten about it already, and if he hasn't, then just explain that that's the way the world works. Not sure if that'll work, boss. The reporter insisted on digging his grave deeper. Potter knows how to keep a grudge, you saw what he did to Fudge's approval ratings. Neville put on his uniform as soon as he got the news about what had happened in the alley. Got a report in Gran, Neville explained to the stoic matron of the Longbottom family. There's no way Harry's going to let them get away with this. But you still have a bit more time before you're supposed to go in, his Gran protested weakly. It's my duty, Gran, Neville said tightly. Let me take a look at you then, she demanded. Just like your grandfather he'd be. He's proud of you, you know that, don't you? Just promise me that you'll be careful. I promise, Gran, Neville agreed. Harry, Tonks called out as she walked into the cauldron. I just heard what happened. Where's Hermione? Is she all right? She's a bit shook up over what happened, Harry said. She's asleep right now. Why aren't you sitting with her? Tonks growled. Because I have a job to do, Harry replied calmly. Though I would appreciate it if you sat with her, I'd rather she not be left alone right now. Fine, Tonks spat. The Auror's hair shifted into several colors as she stormed up the stairs. Out of my way, she snapped at the man in front of the door. I don't think so. Mundy pulled a lethal-looking submachine gun out from under his jacket and pointed it at the young Auror. One more step, one sudden move and you're dead. I'm just here to sit with Hermione, Tonks said slowly. I'm not here to hurt her. I don't know you, Mundy said simply. The Major ordered me to watch her while he was gone, and no one is getting through this door without his orders while I'm alive. Harry told me to sit with her, Tonks said. Didn't tell me. Let her in, Mundy. Tonks jumped at the voice that appeared behind her. You sure, McLean? Mundy eyed Tonks suspiciously. She's the other guard, McLean explained. Major trusts her and thought a female on close protection might make Ms. Granger feel more comfortable. Fine, Mundy agreed. Tonks sighed in relief as the scary man lowered his weapon. So, can I go in then? She asked nervously. Yeah, go in, Mundy agreed. Don't mind him, McLean said as he led Tonks towards the door. He's just a bit upset that Ms. Granger got attacked on his watch. Oh, Tonks walked into the room to find Hermione sitting in the dark. Hermione. Tonks. Hermione asked. Is that you? Yeah, it's me. Where's Harry? Tonks tried to think of an excuse that would placate the melancholy girl. Downstairs planning his next move, McLean said. He isn't taking what happened very well. What do you mean? Hermione asked. Nothing happened to him. He wasn't able to protect you, McLean explained. And he's taking that. He should be okay soon, ma'am. It's really that bad? Hermione's concern for Harry overriding her own depression. He went from sitting with you to upping the schedule, McLean said. And he's also increasing the scale. Rather than a limited raid, he's going to take the whole thing. Do we have enough men to do that? Plenty, McLean agreed. Normally you don't want to attack unless you have at least 3 to 1 in favor. Assuming that every adult in the alley is a hostile, we have about 2 to 1 in favor. You said you'd normally be worried about that. Tonks prompted. Ever heard of the term force multiplier? McLean asked. It means one of ours is worth 1.5 of theirs, or 2, or 5, or whatever. It isn't a boast, it's a recognition of the fact that better training and equipment will make soldiers more effective. Not to mention the fact that 2 to 1 is the worst case. Major thinks that we'll have 3 or as much as 4 to 1. He thinks that most of them will be friendly or neutral. Can you give us any more details? Hermione said. I think the Major wanted to keep it close to his vest, McLean said with a glance at the young Auror. I can tell you he's named it Operation March to the Sea. Hermione's mouth formed an, oh. As in Sherman. On the nose, ma'am. I'm here, Harry, Neville called out as he came through the fireplace. When do we attack? Have a seat, Neville, Harry replied. We're just discussing that. Hermione's okay, isn't she? Neville asked as he took his seat. Shook up but fine, Harry replied. I have Tonks with her right now. Good. Now the main thing is that I don't want anyone to escape. Harry cut off when he noticed Tom approaching. Get you something to drink, Mr. Longbottom? Tom asked with more respect than Neville could remember hearing directed towards himself before. Anything wet, Neville replied. Thank you, Tom. A pleasure to serve anyone in that uniform, Tom said proudly. Might I ask you a question, Major Potter? What is it, Tom? Why aren't you more angry about what happened to Ms. Granger? Tom asked. You just seem too calm. No disrespect intended, of course. You don't get angry at a dog when it messes on your carpet, Harry said slowly. You thump to let it know you're angry and rub his nose in it so he knows what he did. Anger just makes you sloppy and makes you do things you'd regret later. So you're just going to show them the error of their ways. I'm going to give a measured response, Harry said. They need to learn that there are consequences to their actions and that I will respond in kind to any attack they make. I think I understand, Tom agreed. I'll have drinks out soon. Thank you, Tom. So we're going to burn Nocturne then? Neville asked eagerly. If we have to, Harry agreed. I'd rather it not come to that, but if they don't want to admit that they're outclassed, then they deserve what they get, Neville said savagely. Get the scouts and the magical support into place, Harry whispered to one of the messengers. Have them keep out of sight until I give the order. Yes, sir. Later that night, the people of the wizarding world were shocked out of their normal complacency by a report crackling over their wizarding wireless sets. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming for a special news bulletin. All around the United Kingdom, families gathered around their wireless. As I speak, forces under the command of Major Harry Potter are assaulting Death Eater positions in Nocturne Alley. We now go to Special Correspondent Michael Redshirt, already on the scene. Thanks, Tom. I'm standing at the entrance of Nocturne Alley with Major Harry James Potter, commander of the 95th Rifles. Major Potter, could you explain to our viewers why you've decided to invade Nocturne Alley? I'd hardly call it an invasion, Harry's voice replied. For too long, Nocturne Alley has been seen as a haven for dark wizards by both sides. People forget that the majority of Nocturne Alley is no different than Diagon, made up of decent folks that just want to live their lives. Our presence here is no different than our difference in Diagon. We're making this place safe for decent people again. But what do you say? Quote, get down, Harry's voice yelled. McLean, get me that sniper. Major Potter has just saved me from a curse that came out of one of the upper stories, the reporter whispered into his microphone. His men are URK. Michael, are you there? Your man just took a spell to the face, Harry's voice came over the wireless. I'm having him sent to the aid station. Major Potter, wait, Tom said quickly. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Not at this time, Harry replied. I have a battle to win. Harry dropped the microphone and turned back to the task at hand. Get those people to the rear. No, take their wands first and sort through them. You wouldn't let them keep pistols, would you? Think, Neville. Sorry, Harry, Neville said with a blush. You heard him, man. What are you doing with us? A woman pulled her children close. Just escorting you to a safe place, Neville assured her. If you aren't Death Eaters, then we'll allow you to come back here when you're finished. How are you going to check us? The woman asked. Pull up your sleeve, Neville ordered. See, bare skin. Oh, am I free to go? We'd like you to speak with a few people first, Neville said. And we have our healers on hand to give everyone a look over. Healers? The woman asked hopefully. Real healers. Real healers, Neville confirmed. Could they take a look at Holly here? The woman asked hopefully. She's had a bit of a cough lately and I haven't had enough galleons too. Jones, Neville called out. Escort this lady to the healers and have them take care of that cough. Yes sir, Jones agreed. This way ma'am. Albus, Minerva caught the headmaster on his way out of the school. Where are you going? Nocturne Alley, Dumbledore replied. I have to get there before it's too late. Albus makes sense, Minerva demanded. Too late for what? Nocturne has started fighting back, Dumbledore replied. But I don't think it's too late. Stop things before they go out of control. Albus, they're not going to let Harry just march into Nocturne Alley and take over, Dumbledore went on. They're going to fight back, and everyone that went in with Harry is going to die. Show the boy some credit, Minerva snapped. You saw how he dealt with the Death Eaters before. I saw how he was able to kill a couple groups of misguided children out on a lark, Dumbledore said hotly. He doesn't have any idea of what it's like to deal with the real thing. Get out of the way Minerva. Neville's detachment rounded a building and began taking fire from a large group of Death Eaters. What do we do sir? One of the men demanded. Sir, what do we do? Neville didn't know what as the spells flew past, so he tried to think of what his commander's actions would be in a similar situation. Grabbing the flag from the dead color guard, Neville turned to his men. Follow me, he called out as he charged towards the group of Death Eaters. The men cheered as they followed their commander into the group of surprised dark wizards. Spells and bayonets flashed in several seconds of fighting. You okay sir? Who'd we lose? Neville ignored the question. Smith and Hogue, the man replied. 3 more wounded. Sir, your arm. Neville looked down and noticed the wound for the first time. Damn, Neville hissed as he watched the line of black move up his arm. Cut it off. Excuse me sir, the young soldier asked nervously. Neville took off his belt and wrapped it tightly around his arm below the elbow. The man watched in shock as Neville pulled out his wand and placed the tip of his wand on the junction of his wrist. Sir, you aren't going to. The young man watched in shock as Neville cast a cutting curse. Withering charm, Neville managed to say through clenched teeth. Would have spread to the entire body if I hadn't cut it out. Isn't there a way the healers could have stopped it? The soldier asked faintly. I don't have time for that, Neville growled. Now help me up and get me my sword. Lieutenant Longbottom cleared out a group in Sector 14, Smythe said to Harry. 2 dead and several wounded. And on the other side? All dead, Smythe said. It got down to bayonets. Anything else? They're making their stand in a bar at the end of the street, Smythe said. What do you want us to do about that sir? We've cleared out everything else. Yes sir, Smythe agreed. Break out the Gustavs, Harry ordered after a moment of thought. Volley fire Unital, there's nothing left. Yes sir. Keep them out of sight if possible, Harry added. I'd rather they don't have any idea of what we did. Right sir. Harry, Dumbledore arrived with a pop. Thank God I got here in time, you have to get out of here before. Dumbledore trailed off as a building at the end of the street disappeared with a large bang. What just happened? Resistance just ended, Harry said calmly. Was there something you wanted? How? Dumbledore said in shock. How were you able to? If you don't have anything important for me then I'm going to have to ask you to leave, Harry interrupted. This is still a closed area until we can make sure it's safe enough for civilians again. Harry, McLean, Harry raised his voice. Escort Mr. Dumbledore to Diagon Alley and have the healers look over him. Yes sir. A surprisingly docile Dumbledore allowed himself to be led away. Sir, Smythe said as he walked up. The alley belongs to you, all resistance has been ended. What's the butcher's bill? Harry asked with a sigh. 50 dead on their side, Smythe began. 12 on ours, 5 civilians, and another 10 unknowns. We also been finding several old bodies ranging from 1 week to 100 years old. I did this, Harry whispered. This is all my fault. It's your responsibility, sir, Smythe disagreed. There's a difference, your job is to plan, to see to it that you lose as few men as possible. I know but, Harry paused. But they didn't have to be here, I could have. Do you know what hell is, Major? The old sodder asked. Hell is being condemned to rot away. Hell is to spend the rest of your life rotting into uselessness. ... I know what hell is. No man here regrets his choice to join you. To die in battle with our brothers. To die with our brothers in a noble cause rather than to continue our sentence in hell is a gift that none of us will ever be able to repay. Do not mourn their deaths. Celebrate their release, for no matter what the future holds they will never go back to the rotting hell. We have a saying that when we die and go to be judged. Smythe added. The old man looked at Harry and smiled. When we arrive, we'll announce ourselves with one more soldier reporting, sir. I've spent my time in hell. He spent his time in hell, sir, and he died on his feet like a man. He's one of the lucky ones. Thank you, Sergeant Major, Harry said softly. My job, sir, Smythe replied. Wake up, Neville. Neville awoke to find Susan Bones looking down at him. Hey, Susan, Neville said. What are you doing here? My aunt suggested that me and a few friends visit the wounded soldiers, Susan explained. I was surprised to find you here. Didn't know I'd joined, huh? Neville asked. No, I didn't, Susan agreed. The doctor tell you when I could leave? Neville asked. I can't believe you cut off your own arm, Susan said suddenly. You could have just come in for the counter curse. Takes 2 days to get that done, Neville retorted. And I didn't have time for that. Besides, I didn't take off much of my arm. May as well say it was just my hand. That's a big improvement, Susan said hotly. You're going to be without your hand for the rest of your life. It's not so bad, Neville defended himself. I'm told that a hook can be more useful than a hand in some circumstances, good at opening bottles. It'll make drinking butter bear more convent anyway. You don't know? Susan asked incredulously. Don't know what? Dr. Harper has been experimenting with new replacements, Susan explained. The new ones are just as good as what they replace. You really didn't know? Neville was saved from answering by the appearance of McLean. Afternoon, Ms. Bones, McLean said with a grin. You know when you're ready to come back, Lefty. Lefty, here. McLean tossed the latest issue of Teen Witch Weekly onto Neville's bed. Harry, Hermione said with a voice tinged with humor. Listen to this. Are you reading Teen Witch? Harry asked incredulously. This issue is filled with lots of news, both good and bad. Hermione read, ignoring her friend. Harry Potter, the wizarding world's most dreamy wizard, has been taken by his longtime friend Hermione Granger. Is there a point to this, Hermione? Harry demanded. But all is not lost, girls, Hermione continued. We still have Neville. Lefty, Longbottom, the hero of Knockturn Alley. Neville, Harry said in shock. Lefty, our sources reveal. Hermione dissolved into giggles. Poor bastard, Harry said. Better him than me. Harry, Hermione said with a mock glare. Don't be jealous of Lefty. Has anyone told Neville about this? Harry asked. I think McLean won the coin toss, Hermione replied. They both looked up at a knock on the door. Enter, Harry called out. It's me, Major, Smythe announced himself. General send word that he'd like to meet with you. You know what's it's about? Harry asked. Death Eaters hit a couple houses, Smythe replied. And they left a message for you. What did they say? You can't protect them all, Potter, Smythe recited from memory. At a guess, the general wants to know what you're going to do about it. We know why they picked those houses. Hermione entered the conversation. Did they have any connection to the wizarding world? Looks like they were chosen randomly, Smythe replied. We have enough men to... Harry's voice took on an odd tone. Keep up the scare. Not unless we strip the school, Smythe said after a moment of thought. And even then it would make things difficult if we ran into any trouble. We need to knock them all down before they know what's happening, Harry sighed. We lose surprise, then things are going to get much more difficult. I might have a place to get a few more men, Smythe said slowly. No promises, but I think they'll be interested. Who? Tough little mountain bastards, Smythe replied with a happy smile. And McLean might be able to recruit a few of the ladies from hell. Right. You want to come with me, Hermione? Rather she come with me if that's all right with you, Major, Smythe interrupted. Why? Hermione asked. I wouldn't want to deprive a gastronome like you from trying something new, Smythe said fondly. And I also think it might be a good time for you to get your feet wet. Your choice, Hermione, Harry offered. You go ahead, Harry. It's settled then, Harry agreed. The general send a car. Downstairs, Smythe agreed. So where are we going? Hermione asked after Harry had left the room. Ever eaten Quella? Smythe asked with a smile. Or drunk lassie? No, Hermione said with a smile. Where is it from? Nepal. Sorry to bother you with this, Major, the general said. But that's the situation. Like it or not, the politicos are sticking their noses in and demanding that something get done. I understand, General, Harry agreed wearily. Given enough time I can stop this. Ask me for anything but time, the general said with a laugh. Maybe I can help. What are your plans, Major? I'd like to hit several targets at once, or in rapid succession at worst. Harry answered. Unfortunately, I don't have enough men to do that and keep up my current commitments at the same time. Would more injured men help? The general asked. Mundy and the others are working out, aren't they? In the long term, yes, Harry agreed. The problem is that it takes a while to familiarize the new men with the magical world. Not using them the way they're intended to be used then. Not until they learn enough to get by, Harry agreed. Mundy gets used for a few things. The rest of them are exclusively trainers and replacements at the moment. I figured that it was better to put them with experienced men for the time being. Sensible, the general said after a moment of though. If you could get more men with experience in the magical world, would you take them? Yes. How many? A company or two would be wonderful, Harry said after a moment of thought. More would be great, but I could get by with 2 more companies. Why so few? My sergeant major is looking to get a few men right now, Harry replied. And another of my sergeants is looking into recruiting a few more. Mind if I ask who they think they'll find in England? Smythe said something about tough little bastards from the hills, Harry replied. And McLean mentioned the ladies from hell. I understand, the general said with a smile. Anything else? Air support might be useful in the future too, Harry agreed. If the other side is as incompetent as I hope they are. So what did you want, you old bastard? The short man asked with a neutral look on his face. Come on, Paineru, can't I just come here to introduce my lovely granddaughter to the joys of your country's cuisine? Smythe replied innocently. No. How many years were you in before you retired? 30, Paineru replied. Why? Care to put in a few more? Maybe, Paineru said slowly. Why are you coming to me? You know about my family, don't you? What about it? Show him your wand, hun, Smythe ordered. I see, Paineru said with a nod. What's that have to do with me? They've got a group of terrorists bothering them, Smythe said. And it's spilled into the non-magical world. We've been given the task of ending the insurgency and restoring order. Hey, good. I might be able to get 30 men together, Paineru said slowly. But that's only if your side can provide transportation. Only 30. You have time for me to train new men. Just asking, Smythe said. Now that we've got that out of the way, it's time for more important things. Like what? Paineru asked suspiciously. Tell him what you want to eat, honey, Smythe said to his lovely granddaughter. And speak slowly, he's not too bright and his hearing is going out. For that, Paineru said to Smythe. I'll spit in your food. He turned to Hermione. Yours is safe. What would you like? Whatever you recommend, Hermione replied. I've never eaten any of it before. So did you have a nice visit at the hospital? Madame Bones asked her niece. I did, Auntie, Susan agreed. Spent most of my time talking to Neville Longbottom. Frank and Alice's boy. She had to resist the urge to smirk. She loved it when a plan came together. That's him, Susan agreed. Did you know that he joined the army? I may have heard something along those lines, Madame Bones agreed. What was he in for? He got hit by a withering charm, Susan said. So he cut off his hand, can you believe that? Sounds like he takes after his grandfather, Madame Bones said with a smile. You knew him. He was a senior Auror when I joined, Madame Bones said with a wave. Damn good man too. Oh, so I was wondering. Susan licked her lips nervously. Would it be all right if I stayed out late today? Want to spend some time at Hannah's house then? No, the doctor said it would be good for Neville's recovery if he were to spend some time out of the hospital. Susan said in a rush. And since you said that we should support them, take as long as you like, Madam Bones agreed. The main reason I want you home so early is because it's relatively safe here. I don't suppose you'll be in any danger if you're being escorted by our young hero. I'm sure you're right, Auntie, Susan said. Where did you plan to go? Dinner at the Cauldron and ice cream after maybe, Susan said with a shrug. I hadn't thought about it much. Why don't you get ready and I can set things up for you? Madam Bones suggested, carefully not mentioning the fact that it would allow her to arrange a bit of security beforehand. Thanks, Auntie, Susan agreed quickly. Madam Bones smiled as she watched her niece bounce out of the room. Now how to convince Moody that he needs eat out today? Bones mused. I suppose I could just come out and tell him why, but where would be the fun in that? Miss Granger, a large man greeted Hermione as she came into the cauldron. Might I have a moment of your time? What can I do for you? Hermione asked. I just wanted to thank you, the man said, for saving my wife and son. They're all I have. I don't know what I would have done without them. You're welcome, Hermione said. But when did I do that? In the bookstore, the man replied. My son has nightmares about it. My wife too, but they said that you come in and save them every time. Just thank you. If there is anything I can ever do for you, then just ask. Thank you, lad, Smythe said for his speechless granddaughter. You go upstairs and wait for Harry, he said to his trembling granddaughter. Okay, hun. Okay, Hermione said weakly. She's been having a rough time of it, Smythe said conversationally. Poor kid, the other man said. Shouldn't have to deal with this sort of thing. No, she shouldn't. Almost pulled my boy out of school because of it, the man continued. Was in the middle of a big row about it when he said that she'd saved him before and she'd save him again. I guess it's not easy to be a hero. Sergeant Major Smythe, the old man held out his hand. Chief Constable Hartley, the other man replied as they shook hands. Good to meet you. Speaking out of school, Smythe said in a low voice. Would you like to get a bit of unofficial pay back? I don't want to break any laws, Hartley said quickly. I think I could convince the Major to give it his blessing, Smythe replied. What's the deal? Be nice to have a few more people that know how to ferret out hidden places, Smythe said slowly. We might have few houses in need of being searched soon. Easiest way is to sweat it out of the people that hid things in the first place. We may not have that option. Be happy to help then, Hartley agreed. And, if you don't know who Smythe and McLean are recruiting, then Google the words, Black Watch, and Gurkha. Omake. What McLean did before Harry recruited him. Right, McLean's voice oozed disdain. You lot are the dumbest bunch of gutter scrapings I could ever have the misfortune of finding. You remember what your mission is, or did you forget that too? Sell Girl Guide biscuits. One of the trembling little girls asked nervously. Yeah, McLean agreed. But what do you do if they say no? Put a bit of brick in a sock and hit them with it. One of the more confident girls replied. And then take their wallet. Then, McLean prompted. Cut 'em, the girl said uncertainty. And tell 'em that it'll happen gain if they don't pay up. That's my girl, McLean said proudly. Thanks, Grandpa. 1 hour later, would you like to buy some Girl Guide cookies? Well, aren't you just oof? I thought you were only supposed to do that if he said no. This way we get the wallet and we can keep the cookies, McLean's granddaughter explained. I just thought of it. Oh, the other girl said in understanding. Good idea. Is your hand bothering you? Susan asked in concern. Everything okay? I'm fine, Neville reassured his date. It's just a little strange getting used to it. I bet, Susan purred. Let me see it. Okay. Neville agreed slowly. Why? I just want to look at it, Susan lied. So what are your hobbies? I've always been fond of herbology, Neville replied. What about you? Well, Moody smiled as he watched his grandson work. He couldn't be prouder of the boy. First the boy proved himself to be a chip off the old block, and now the little bugger was seducing Madam Bones's niece. Good on ye, lad, Moody muttered to himself. Now all I have to do is figure out what to do with you. Thought you'd disturb the boys' date, would you? Mumph, the gagged Death Eater gurgled in fear. We can't allow Potter to continue, Fudge whined. If he gets too popular then he could threaten my position after the war is over. The last thing we need is another bloody Dumbledore. I wouldn't worry too much, Minister, a man said with an oily voice. The boy has shown no interest in power. It's likely that he'll live out the rest of his life playing with those soldiers of his, that is unless he chooses to go Muggle. But what about the poor? The minister spat the last word. Since he took Nocturne the damned poor have been singing his praises. Not surprising considering the fact that he had his healers go over each one of the children, the man agreed. Or that he's whisked several of them off to new housing. What should we do about it? Nothing, the man shrugged. The underclasses aren't important in the grand scheme of things. So long as you hold the purebloods, then you're safe. I still don't like it. Do you know what the public likes more than a hero, Minister? What? Fudge snapped. They like to see him fall, to watch his gold turn to brass. The man said with a smile. If he gets too troublesome then we drag out his secrets and destroy him. In the meantime, why don't you send a memo to a few reliable people in the ministry? State your worries that Potter was a bit too in his treatment of Nocturne and send similar memos every time Potter does something similar. Why should I do that? Fudge demanded. What good will it do? Have you forgotten how Crouch fell? The man sighed. He was often tempted to just Imperio the fool and be done with it. Would certainly save time anyway. Oh, Fudge agreed. I understand. Good, the man purred. In the meantime, stay out of the boy's way and do nothing. I'll take care of the details. Might be a good idea to clear a few hours, Major, Smythe suggested. For the surprise. What surprise? Harry asked with a frown. Wouldn't want to spoil it, sir, Smythe replied. But it's best to be prepared. Could also be a good idea to take that lovely granddaughter of mine to tour the village. They've made a lot of improvements and you may wish to give your blessings for people to start moving in. Will Blake be there? Daphne might have mentioned her intention to be there, Smythe agreed. Daphne, I may be old, but I'm not dead. Smythe laughed. And I always did like them a bit younger. Everyone's younger than you, Sergeant Major, Harry retorted. I'll be there after I can round up Hermione. Thank you, sir. Harry put his paperwork away and went off in search of his friend. After a few minutes of looking, he found her reclining by one of the windows with a book cradled in her hand. Get up, you lazy witch, Harry said to his friend. We have things to do and places to be. We do. Hermione looked up with a smile. The surprise is ready then. How do you know about it? Harry asked suspiciously. It's my job to know these things, Hermione said with an arrogant smile. And no, I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's also your job to keep me informed, Harry replied with a grin. Need to know, Harry, need to know. Fine, Harry agreed. Let's go. Give me a sec, Hermione begged. I just want to get to the end of this chapter. Fine. Harry pushed his friend's feet out of the way and took a seat. After a few minutes of reading, Hermione carefully marked her spot and closed the book. Ready? Yeah, let's go. Harry gave his friend a hand up and they walked through the door to the village. Sergeant Major Bly, Petty Officer Hook, Harry greeted the two men as he entered the village. Was there some reason you were waiting for me? Eager to show you the improvements, sir, Bly said. Hook. Would also like you to take a look at the power station we've set up, Hook agreed. Well, let's go take a look then, Harry said. This way, sir, Bly suggested. As you can see, most of the buildings are made of stone and they've held up surprisingly well to 50 years of neglect. So what have you had to do to make the place livable again? Hermione asked. We've had to gut the interior of several of the buildings, Bly sighed. We've saved what we could but. Go on. Other than that, it was mostly upgrading the plumbing and electricity, Bly continued. Now it's just a matter of landscaping and having Ms. Blake's people put in the wards and charms. What are they putting in? Harry asked mildly. Enlarging the spaces mostly, Bly replied. Working it so the electricity doesn't come into conflict with the wards is the other major thing. We figure that we still have another week of work before everything is finished, but we can start moving people in now if you approve. Several of the workers have expressed an interest in having their family moved here. Granted, Harry said immediately. Do we have enough space for everyone? That's another thing I wanted to speak with you about, sir, Bly said. My boys are here with nothing to do, so I was hoping we could put up a few more buildings. We've got plenty of stone and... Do it, Harry agreed. Anything else? Right this way, sir, Hook said eagerly. See that dam over there? Yeah, Harry agreed. It used to be a mill pond, but we're using it to supply some of the electricity, Hook said with a smile. We have a generator hooked up to the water wheel. Will that provide enough power? Hermione asked with a frown. Not alone, Hook said. We also have a steam generator, but most of our energy comes from a bit of spell work one of the new men came up with. How does it work? Hermione demanded. Not completely clear on that myself, Hook admitted with a blush. All I know is that the charms keep the turbine spinning. I could have them send you the technical stuff if you'd like. Thank you, that would be nice. I understand the normal stuff, Hook said quickly. But the magic is a bit beyond me. You've done a wonderful job here, Hook, Harry said firmly. Both of you have done wonders. Thank you, sir, the two NCOs said quickly. Bly, along with the new buildings. Harry began. Yes, sir, I've got another job I need you to do. Get with Smythe for the details. Got it, sir. Good. Fancy meeting you here, sir, Smythe said as he approached. Speak of the devil and the devil shall appear, Hermione said with a smile. What can I do for you, Sergeant Major? Harry said innocently. Might be a good idea to wander back to the barracks, Smythe suggested. There are some things that require your attention. Wouldn't want to keep them waiting, Harry agreed. Let's go. Smythe led the group back towards the parade ground and Harry froze when he caught sight of what awaited him. Gods, where did you find them all? I managed to scrape up 30 Gurkha, Smythe replied. And McLean got another 50 men, the ones in skirts. And the rest, the general came through for you, sir, Smythe said with a grin. A company each of Canadians and Anzacs. Are they ready for action? Might want to ask their commanders, sir, Smythe said with a cough. Right, Harry said with a shake. Harry walked up to the commander of the nearest formation. What's your name, Captain? Captain Sean Finn, commander of Alpha 25, 1st Special Services Force. What have you got for me? Harry asked eagerly. I have 100 men to add to your command, Major, the young Canadian said with a smile. About half of them Americans. Why did you bring Americans? Harry asked quickly. Americans and Canadians have a history of fighting each other's wars, the man explained. Many Americans fought in Canadian units before the United States officially joined the First Great War, and they did the same in World War II, and many Canadians joined the U.S. military during Vietnam. We're siblings, you can't fight one of us without fighting us both. Good, when will you be ready to commence operations against the enemy? Immediately, sir, Captain Finn replied. Good, wait, Harry said with a frown. I just saw a goblin in with your men. I'm sure you didn't, sir, the Canadian captain said quickly. That would be a violation of several treaties, so I can assure you that there are no goblins in my unit. Harry just walked up to the soldier in question. Name? Private Bloodstamper, sir, the goblin said. Where you from, troop? Canada, sir, the goblin replied quickly. And I assure you that I am not a goblin. I see. Harry looked at the man to the goblin's left and at the man to the goblin's right. So you're trying to tell me that you're a typical Canadian? Yes, sir, the goblin agreed. You don't see anything odd here, Captain? Nothing odd here, sir. Good enough for me, Harry said. Carry on, men. Yes, sir. Let's go take a look at the other new men, Harry said to his sergeant major. I wanna have a meeting a few hours after that. Yes, sir, Smythe agreed. Good to meet you, Captain. Bruce Hart, the man replied. Australian Army. What have you got for me? 2 platoons of diggers and another of Kiwis, the Australian said with a smile. Ready to kick as soon as you say the word. Excellent, Harry said with a grin. Good to have you aboard. 3 more groups to see, sir, Smythe prompted. And we're going to have to hurry if we want to have the planning session before dark. Right, Harry agreed. Excuse me, Captain. Major Potter, Smythe began. Let me introduce you to my good friend Paineru. Former warrant who was good enough to come back with a few friends of his. Glad to be here with you, Major, Paineru said with a grin. It's good to be back in a uniform again. Welcome aboard, Harry said. Smythe says you're the best and I'm glad to have you. Thank you, sir. Got a special job for you if you're interested, Harry continued. We'll talk later. Yes, sir. Come on, Smythe, Harry said happily. This is just like Christmas. Thought you'd feel like that, sir, Smythe agreed. Sergeant Major Davidson, the man at the head of the Sottish formation, said as Harry approached. Ready to serve as soon as you give the word, sir. Excellent, Harry said. Glad to have you with us, Sergeant Major. Glad to be here, sir. What else, Sergeant Major? Harry asked as they walked to the next group. Handful of Americans, sir. Americans? Harry asked in shock. Military observer and a couple pilots, Smythe said with a shrug. Let's go have a look at them then. Major Wood, the American officer, held out a hand. Good to meet you, Major Potter. What can I do for you, Major Wood? Officially I'm here to observe only. Sorry, Major, but the politicians say that this is an internal matter and the gutless bastards won't let us do our job, the man said with a grin. Unofficially, I have several men that just happen to be vacationing in the area. The Major said with a grin, each one of them a 1 whiskey or 2 whiskey. 1 whiskey, Harry asked. 2 whiskey. The U.S. Army has an additional skill modifier of 1 through 3 whiskey for the magically adept, Major Wood explained. Depending on strength, I believe you'd call a 1 whiskey a squib here. Interesting, Harry mused. Why don't you spend a year with us to see how we do things after you've got things wrapped up here? Sounds like a good idea, Harry agreed. Sorry to interrupt, another man said. But I wouldn't want Major Potter to leave without hearing about what I've got to offer. Sorry about that, Eddie, Major Wood replied. Major Potter, allow me to introduce Major Eddie Rickenbacker, American Volunteer Group. Major, so what have you got for me, Major? Close air support, Major Rickenbacker replied. You give the word and I'll turn a little piece of land into a charnel house, unofficially of course. Officially all I can do is give a demonstration of what my planes can do. What kind of planes? Well, Major Rickenbacker began. Few people wanted to bring some of the old aircraft, said we owed it to ourselves to remain true to our history. And while it would have been nice, it wouldn't be practical. The pilot explained, for one thing none of us are rated on the P-40. For another, well, do you know how hard it would be to drum up enough aircraft? Very. Frigging Texas Air Force wouldn't let us have their planes, bastards wanted to come themselves and leave us out of it. Oh, so we brought our current inventory, Major Rickenbacker said with an evil grin. And a nod to Nanjin in this chapter. Omake. First aid practice. You lot haven't been slacking off while I've been away, haven't you? McLean growled. No, Sergeant McLean, the girl guides replied together. Really? McLean purred. Then maybe you could explain these bandages I see on your little arms. We're practicing first aid, one of the girls replied. Good. So how badly did you get cut then? We're just practicing, Grandpa, one of the little girls protested. No, that's not the way things work in this troop, McLean said in disappointment. Come with me, girls. Where are we going, Grandpa? To the Boy Scout camp across the way, McLean replied. We're going to address the remarks they made about you when they walked by a few minutes ago, and then we're gonna have all the first aid practicing you can take. So I should bring my knife then? The little girl asked innocently. You should always bring your knife, hun. Even on dates. What dates? McLean asked suspiciously. When I get older, the little girl explained. Oh, especially on dates. A toast, Smythe said. To our gallant allies. To our gallant allies, everyone repeated as they brought the glass to their lips. To Major Potter, Captain Finn announced. For being kind enough to invite us all to the party. For inviting us all to the party. Now that we all know each other, Harry said with a grin. Let's get down to business. He cut off as Hermione came through the door. Harry, Hermione walked into the meeting with a stricken look on her face. What is? Harry asked gently. The Death Eaters have attacked again, Hermione said looking close to tears. Go on. This time they hit a family of 5, Hermione said. One of the children was alive when the police arrived. She died on the way to the hospital. She was only 6 years old and they. Take a deep breath, Harry said firmly. They left a message written in blood on one of the walls. Hermione regained a bit of control, saying, You can't protect them all, Potter. What are we going to do? Respond in kind, Harry said. Sergeant Major. Yes, sir. Take Ms. Granger out and get her a bit of air, Harry commanded. Yes, sir. Poor thing, Major Rickenbacker said with a frown. Was the pictures that did it to her, McLean spoke up, causing several men to jump. They took their time about it and it was rather messy. Reminded me a bit of some of the things I saw in Nanking before the war. The old man said as he began handing out the aforementioned items. Gods, one of the other officers gasped. I hate to say this, gentlemen. Harry looked around the room. But this does give me an excuse for the action we have planned for tomorrow. One request, Major, Finn said coldly. A little change in the rules of engagement. Tell the men to raise the black flag. Gladly. Morning, Major, Neville greeted his friend. Do you have a minute? You can have 2, Harry said with a smile. I can't spare more than that. I want to come off my convalescent leave, Neville said quickly. My new hand is working perfectly and there isn't any reason I should have any more rest. Really? Harry tossed Neville a large teacup. Catch. Neville reflexively tried to grab the cup with his new hand but the fingers refused to close properly. I don't need a hand to command men, Neville said quickly. How long does Dr. Harper want you to rest? 2 more months, Neville admitted with an expression of profound discomfort. In 1 week, Harry said. You will come back and we will reassess your mobility. Until then, I want you to go home and do the exercises she taught you. I understand, sir, Neville agreed. I don't think you do, Harry said gently. You're a fine combat commander but you're not at 100% right now. At 80 I'll let you come back, at 90 I'll let you kick down doors again. I'm at 79 right now, Neville said hopefully. Then you'll have no problem being at 80 in a week, Harry said firmly. Yes, sir. Harry smiled as he watched his friend leave. If the injury hadn't prevented Neville from taking part in the operation, then Harry would have had to find another excuse to keep the boy's hands relatively clean. It wouldn't do to change the plan this late in the game. Neville wouldn't thank him if he ever found out what Harry had done, but Harry could live with that. Sacrifices had to be made in war and it would be naive to think they wouldn't be necessary to build a new society. Is there some reason that Major Potter didn't come to this meeting? The general asked slowly. He's busy, Hermione said. But he sends his regrets. We'll get to that later, the general said. In the meantime, I need to know what he's going to do about the attack yesterday. Hire is on my back and making noises about relieving Major Potter and placing a new man in charge if something doesn't get done soon. Harry, as a fine young officer, the general said. But not one I'd have as a regimental commander until he gained more experience if he didn't have a lot of experienced non-coms. As I was saying, Hermione said firmly. Harry is responding in kind to the Death Eater attack. Go on. He was going to strike anyway as soon as he got the new men and this latest attack just gave him the excuse, Hermione said firmly. He also told me one thing that I was to pass on to you. What's that? He told me to say that he'd raised the black flag with his colors. I see, thank you Ms. Granger, I'll be sure to tell the higher-ups that their concerns were misplaced and that I have every confidence that Major Potter is up to the job ahead. What does it mean, General? Hermione asked. About the black flag, Harry wouldn't tell me. That, the old man asked in surprise. No quarter. Harry's face was impassive as he watched his men set fire to the Malfoy home. So far as he could tell, they had brought this upon themselves. All around the United Kingdom, similar scenes were repeating themselves. Mal had said that a gorilla swims through the population like a fish through water. Harry was draining the lake. Paineru had to smile as he observed the amateurish guard the Death Eaters put around their hideout. It was beginning to look like bringing in the old experienced men wasn't as necessary as he'd thought it would be. He reassessed that statement when one of the guards began to relieve himself on a bush not 2 feet away. Hell, His 12-year-old granddaughter's Girl Guides group could take this bunch of jokers without too much trouble. Sighing at the unprofessional conduct shown by his foes, Paineru pulled out his knife and went to work. The Death Eater looked at the childlike man with the large knife and began to laugh. Those laughs soon turned to screams as he lost his manhood, then gurgles as his blood spouted from the void that was his neck. The Death Eater learned as others have why the Gurkha was one of the most feared of knife fighters in the world. 2 slashes were all that it took. The Death Eater's companions looked on in fear and began to back away too late. With a cry of glee, the other Gurkhas stalked forward. Their knives, small swords, really had been thirsty for too long. The Death Eaters pointed their wands at the Gurkhas only to lose their wands first, still clasped in spasming hands now severed at the wrists. Phantom pain was brief. As they started to bleed out, the next knife blow across their throat was a blessing really. "Neville," his gran asked in shock. "What are you doing home right now?" "Harry said I had to wait at least another week before he'd let me come back on duty," Neville said sadly. "Your hand?" she asked sympathetically. "Yeah," the boy agreed. Is there someone else here?" "Why would you ask that, dear?" the old woman asked nervously. "I can hear them," Neville said as his hand dropped to the hilt of his sword. "He's old enough to know Augusta," a gravely voice said. "Tell him." "Tell me what?" Neville demanded. "Your grandfather, my husband, is alive," the old woman said. "He's been hiding his relationship with us to keep us safe." "From who?" "Half the bloody world," Moody said as he stepped out. "I have lots of people wanting to kill me and many more that would be happy to get you instead." "You're my grandfather?" Neville asked in shock. "That I am," Moody agreed. I don't know what to say." "Say teach me to kill Death Eaters," Moody said with a grin. "And we'll have something to bond over, as your grandmom likes to say." "Teach me to kill Death Eaters," Neville said eagerly. "Listen up." Major Rickenbacker's voice came over the comm as he addressed his crew. He'd used the commander's privilege to claim the commander's seat on the first check-out flight. Major Potter was good enough to let us take a check-out flight in this thing to test the guns. The old man had to smile at the crew's enthusiastic cheers. "On a patch of land with what I'm told are unusually strong wards containing nothing whatsoever, making it a perfect firing range. I want that place to be smoking rubble as fast as possible, and I want those bastards to die before they get an idea of what the Goonie bird can do." Finn smiled as he thrust his dagger into the Death Eater's kidney. It really wasn't a commander's job to do this sort of thing, but he'd always led from the front and at 27 was too old to learn any other way. "Are the charges set?" the captain asked his top sergeant. "Set and ready to blow," the man agreed. "Ready to go. Have the men secured the area?" "Not a living thing except for us." "Then report our status to the major and move the men out." Young Malfoy, Goyle and Crabbe were posted as sentries at the door of one of their master's lairs. Eyes and ears obvious to their surroundings, since none one would dare approach this location. Besides, anyone approaching had to get past 2 more layers of security. They were safe. Draco turned to ask Crabbe about which girl Goyle fancied now, but Crabbe was sitting down, unresponsive. Draco shook him and Goyle toppled over, this throat a ruin of blood and flesh. 2 well-placed knife thrusts silenced the other 2 boys before they managed to scream and raise the alarm to the few living Death Eaters. "Come on, boys," Captain Hart screamed. "No quarter. No quarter," the men echoed as they swarmed the scattered defenders. "Avenue. None of that," Captain Hart said as he brained the Death Eater with a shovel. "Kill 'em all." Hart looked over his work a few short and bloody minutes later with a profound sense of satisfaction. "What now, sir?" one of the platoon leaders asked. "Stack them up in the main room and douse them with petrol," Hart replied immediately. "Burn everything." "Poppy!" Snape screamed as he stumbled into the great hall. "I need you." "Severus, what? My God, what happened to you?" the woman asked in horror as she took in his appearance. "I dunno," Snape said dully. "One moment everything fine and next walls were comin' down on top o' us. Quickly, on one of the tables. I saw Manar get cut in half," Snape slurred. "The world exploded. What happened?" "Just go to sleep, Severus," the old woman said kindly. "Just try to go to sleep. The world exploded." Snape managed to say one more time before the spells put him to sleep. So how'd it go, Major Eddie? One of the crewmen asked as the old man climbed down to the runway. Not gonna give up my warthog, the old man said with a grin. But old Trogdor here was a nice change of pace. Bet the poor bastards didn't know what hit him. Busted the place up. Followed Temujin's example. Rickenbacker laughed. Didn't leave one stone standing on top of another. They deserved it, sir, the man said seriously. That and more. I saw the pictures. I did too, Airman, Major Rickenbacker sighed. Almost made me want to go down there with the Crunchies to do things personally. And, a bit short but sweet, this looked like a good stop point. Think we'll start with a bunch of worthless leeches in the next chapter. Thanks go to Dave and a few others, I've been waiting months to write this chapter. Omake. The policeman's dilemma. Mr. McLean, what's it to ye? Is this your granddaughter? That's her, McLean confirmed. What did she do? A man tried to get her to get in his van, the constable explained. So she stabbed him 32 times. And he's in intensive care. I see, McLean growled. I'll handle this. But, intensive care, McLean accused his granddaughter. I was trying to draw it out, the little girl defended herself. How was I supposed to know that the constable would stop me? I thought he'd join in. That true, McLean accused the other man. You stop her 'fore she could finish. Yes, he has to go to prison. Ah, you see, hun, McLean said to the young girl. All sorts of bad things happen to men like that in prison. Really? She looked up at the policeman with hopeful eyes. That's right, he agreed. They use guys like him like currency. So instead of saving his life, you were saving him so he'd get tortured for a long time. That's right, McLean said. Remember how I told you to trust the police because a lot of them are retired soldiers? I remember, the girl agreed. I'm sorry I tried to stab you when you were putting bandages on that guy. That's all right, you little monster, the constable said with a smile. Now here's your little knife back. What do you say? McLean prompted. Thank you. You're welcome, the officer said as he began walking away. Wait, what just happened? Still no idea of what happened to Severus? Albus asked. None, Poppy said. From what I've managed to get out of him, they were just sitting around a table when place collapsed on top of him. If it hadn't been for his emergency portkey. Thank you. Turn on the wireless, Hestia shouted as she burst into the room. Really? Molly looked like she was working herself into a rant. Not now, Molly, Arthur said sharply. Turn it on. What's this all about? Dumbledore asked. I just heard, Hestia gasped. Several homes have been destroyed, they don't know how many are dead. They said they were going to explain things on the broadcast. Shish, it's starting. They gathered around the box and listened to the tinny sound that emerged. This is Sean Murphy with the WWN Newsroom. I'm here at the Leaky Cauldron with Major Harry Potter. Hello, Sean, Harry said. How are you today? Very good, Major, Sean replied. You told us that you had an explanation for what happened. I do, Harry agreed. But first, I think you should take a look at these pictures and describe them to your viewers. I'm looking at the bodies of several people, Sean said. They appear to have been tortured and the entire scene is quite appalling. Turn to the next one, Harry ordered. My God. Describe it, Harry said coldly. It's the nude body of a young girl. Sean made a retching noise. 6 years old, Harry added. Go on. It appears that they, what kind of people do things like this? Sean sobbed. My God. I think they get the idea, Harry said. Turn to the next picture. There's more, Sean asked in horror. Just one, Harry agreed. I left out the bad ones. There are worse than this, he asked in horror. Much worse, Harry confirmed. Now turn to the last one. It's a picture of a message written in blood, the reporter said dully. It says, you can't protect them all, Potter, and I presume that it was left by the killers. You are correct, Harry said. They left me that message and today I delivered my response. You didn't. I had my men go to a number of places with orders to kill everyone they find and burn everything they didn't kill, Harry said. These places included several Death Eater safe houses and every Death Eater home I could find. That is my response, Tom. I can protect them. I can protect them by killing every one of your followers. I can protect them by burning everything that can be used to give aid and comfort to you and your cause. And I can protect them by killing you. Who's this Tom you mentioned? Sean struggled to regain his sense of professionalism. Tom Riddle, Harry said. Hogwarts head boy some 50 years ago, now known as Voldemort. Thank you for your time, Major Potter, Sean said in as professional a voice as he could muster. Is there anything you'd like to add? The Death Eaters challenged me when they killed that family, Harry began. And I responded. Now I'd like to deliver a challenge of my own. Yes, everything I've seen indicates that Voldemort and his Death Eaters are nothing more than cowards, Harry said. I'd like to offer him an opportunity to prove me wrong. I shall be waiting for him with my men in 1 week's time. Directions to the location will be printed in the papers. This is Sean Murphy, signing off. Arthur reached over and turned off the wireless. Well, what now? I have to go speak with Harry, Dumbledore replied. Perhaps I can convince him to stop this madness. Did you hear that? Fudge screeched. He admitted it. He admitted that he killed all those people. He admitted that he killed several Death Eaters, Minister, the advisor said quickly. Something that most of the common people agree is a good thing. But it can be used to our advantage, he interrupted smoothly. After everything has quieted down again. I suppose, Fudge agreed after several long seconds. If all else fails, then I suppose that we can always send the Aurors after him. Of course, Minister, the advisor sighed. Looks like time to start considering retirement options. He considered and quickly rejected going to Potter and offering his services. The boy was too likely to have him taken into the next room and shot in the back of the head. No, better to leave gracefully then, the alternative. Whatever you say. Harry, thank God I got here before you left. Dumbledore, Harry greeted the man. Was there something you wanted? Behind the old man, several soldiers shifted their bodies so that their rifles weren't quite pointed at the headmaster's head. You can't face Voldemort, Dumbledore got right to the point. You're not ready. Another thing that can be laid at your feet, Harry said with a shrug. No use crying over spilled milk and all that. Was there anything else you wanted? You insist on doing this. I do, Harry agreed. Then the order shall stand by you, Dumbledore said firmly. We've had our disagreements, but it's time to put all that aside. The order isn't fit to guard a whorehouse, Harry said with a grin. With one or two glaring exceptions. You can't stop us, Dumbledore said stubbornly. How about I keep you in reserve, Harry offered. Provided that you agree to place yourselves under my command. If that's what it takes, Dumbledore agreed quickly. It is, Harry agreed. Good day, Headmaster. Wait, Dumbledore said quickly. There's something else. Oh, the prisoners, Dumbledore said. Even if you didn't take any today, then you still have the ones you took before. True, Harry agreed. What of them? When were you planning to give them to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement? I wasn't. But why? Let's just say that the Ministry hasn't exactly impressed me with their ability to keep prisoners from escaping. If you won't trust them, how about me? No, Harry, please. It's not something I'm willing to compromise on, Harry said. Anything else? Harry, please, Dumbledore begged. Be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Harry said mildly. I will not release a single prisoner into your custody or into the custody of the Ministry. To do so would be the same as releasing them to harm more people. Then you're only concerned with the potential crimes that might commit in the future. Dumbledore asked quickly. I wouldn't say only, Harry replied. But yes, my primary concern is protecting society from prior offenders. Then why don't you allow me to take anyone that won't pose any danger, Dumbledore begged. Just those that you feel won't commit further crimes. You want me to give you any harmless Death Eaters that I have in my custody? Harry asked with an amused grin. Done. Yes, exactly, Dumbledore agreed. Thank you for being so understanding. McLean, Harry called out. Take the headmaster to the harmless Death Eaters and allow him to take as many as he wishes. Yes, sir, McLean agreed. This way, sir. So how do you like being a soldier? Dumbledore tried to engage the frightening man in a conversation. Better than the alternative, McLean said mechanically. Right through here. So have you been a soldier long? Dumbledore tried again. All my life, McLean agreed. The harmless Death Eaters are in this room, sir. You may go in. Dumbledore opened the door and turned deathly pale. Has there been a mistake? The old man said sickly. Did you take me to the wrong room perhaps? No mistake, McLean said firmly. You may have as many as you wish. But they're dead, Dumbledore said in horror. That they are, McLean agreed. Did you perhaps want more of them? I'd be happy to render more Death Eaters harmless if you require more. No, Dumbledore said quickly. You'd really kill innocent people. Nope, McLean replied with a grin. But I'd have trouble finding an innocent person among their ranks, wouldn't I? You can't mean that, Dumbledore said. Don't they deserve a chance to redeem themselves? Some things can't be forgiven, McLean said simply. They gave up any right they had to redeem themselves when they took that mark. But, Dumbledore tried hard to find a reply that the man would understand. I'll grant that one of them could have seen the error in their ways and decided to repent, McLean admitted with a frown. They might have stopped tomorrow and decided to live lives of peace. Yes, Dumbledore seized the moment. So isn't that chance worth showing some restraint? No, McLean said simply. As I said, my duty isn't to them, my duty is to the innocent. Besides, if they really did change, if they really faced up to their actions like men, then they would not go to you. What would they do then? They would pull their wand and kill as many of their former comrades as they could before they fell, McLean said firmly. One must accept responsibility and atone for one's actions. So death is the only answer no matter what happens? Dumbledore asked. What about providing information? Couldn't a Death Eater turn spy and atone in that manner? Blood washes away dishonor, McLean said with a shrug. Providing information before drawing blood is the action of a man. Playing at being a spy to escape responsibility is the action of a coward. 1 week, Neville said firmly. That's why he gave me 1 week. What was that, son? Moody asked. Harry gave me a week to get my hand back, Neville said. And he just challenged Voldemort to a fight in 1 week. I wouldn't worry about it, lad, Moody said. You'll be fine. But what if I can't make it in time? I've got a couple of people that owe me favors, Moody said with a shrug. You'll have all the time you need. Sure we wanna do this? Hermione asked. It's time to end this, Harry sighed. One way or another. True, Hermione agreed. But isn't it a big risk? You know what I've got planned, Harry retorted. Time will just give the advantage to the other side. And a week should just give him enough time to gather all of his forces, Hermione agreed. I still don't like it. Neither do I, Harry admitted. I can't help but think of all the things that can go wrong. Let's go get something to eat, the girl said suddenly. We haven't done that for a while. And ice cream after that, Harry agreed. Just the two of us. Yeah, I'm going out, Sergeant Major, Harry called out as the two friends walked out the door. I'll be back in an hour or two. Take your time, sir, Smythe called back with a smile. Take lots of time. So what did you want to eat? Hermione asked as she took Harry's arm. Grandad showed me a good Nepali place. Why don't we just find something traditional? Harry suggested. Bubble and squeak, bangers and mash, that sort of thing. I saw a fish and chips stand a couple days ago, Hermione mused. We can go there. Sounds perfect, Harry agreed. Maybe go to a movie after that, Hermione said hesitantly. Before we get ice cream, I mean. If you like, Harry said with a smile. We can do anything you want. An chapter or two before Vold buys it, I think. It'll also be fun to write the next few chapters after that. I'm going to enjoy writing some of those scenes. Omake. More of McLean's little monsters. Sir, Smythe said gravely. I have some bad news. What is it? Group of Death Eaters attacked some Girl Guides, Smythe said tightly. There were no survivors. Gods. Yes, sir, Smythe agreed. McLean is going to be impossible. Bastards as proud can be. Wah. We've tried to recover the bodies, but the girls are still playing football with the heads, so. Right, Send up a bottle of something, will you? What did you want, sir? Anything that will get me drunk, Harry replied. Omake by Davidius Brown. The difference between you and I, Dumbledore, is that you are the leader of not just one, but two illegal organizations, the Order of the Phoenix and the Wizengamot, whereas I am a duly appointed officer of the Army of the United Kingdom. Harry, the Ministry of Magic is not illegal. Ministry for Magic, not Ministry of Magic. We are all subjects of Her Majesty the Queen. The Minister for Magic has no independent legal authority. By acting outside of the oversight of the government, the Ministry for Magic is in rebellion against the Crown. I must leave you now, but I suspect that we shall discuss this issue at greater length another day. If you have any further objections to my activities, please take them up with the government. In the meanwhile, I shall do my duty and carry out my orders. Good day, sir. I would not be so presumptuous as to suggest that Snape associate himself with better company, but there you have it. Okay, another idea. Who wants to see napalm dropped on the Forbidden Forest? Or maybe, wait for it, Agent Orange. The forest is too close to the castle. We don't need to be assaulted by acromantulas, and I do not trust the centaurs. We need to defoliate a kilometer-deep strip all around. I've got just the thing we need, Major. Omake along the same theme by Meteoric Shipyards. It seems I am forever playing catch-up with this group. Here it is. Wed, and I'm only reading messages from last Sunday. But these messages gave me an idea. Hermione entered the headmaster's office carrying a very muggle-looking clipboard. She noticed the flowers on the empty perch. Ah, Miss Granger, you have news? Dumbledore asked. Yes, Professor. I found the answer. The problem is a lot more extensive than it appeared at first. Please, have a seat, and explain. Hermione could tell that the headmaster was still upset. His eyes were red and puffy. There was no sign of the twinkle. It's all related, Professor. Hagrid's illness, the missing Foopers, and Auguries. Is it a magical attack? A curse cast by Voldemort? No, we did it to ourselves. After the attack of the acromantulas, the Ministry said they would take care of the problem. They did. They used a poison to get rid of them around Hogwarts. The poison they used is called DDT. It kills insects, and thus took care of the acromantulas, but it killed a lot of other insects, too. But before they die, they can get eaten by birds. In birds it has the unfortunate effect of making their egg shells so thin that they crack before the baby bird is able to live on its own. In Fawkes' case, it killed him during his burning day. There was no magic involved. And Hagrid, he has pancreatic cancer, which might have been caused by exposure to the pesticide. Street Mungo's isn't sure of his prognosis. The damage done to his liver by his alcoholic consumption is not good, too. I'm sorry, Professor. Thank you for your help, Miss Granger. That will be all for now. Omake by Hatton J.C. What if Harry leading officer among the old soldier was Genghis Cohen, known as Cohen the Barbarian from the Discworld? ... Omake. Bellatrix laughed. The old muggle was a fool, he just dropped his thunder wand, or gone as the muggles called it, and drew a sword. She snored as she raised her wand. He must be at least 90 years old. Then he started to smile, a evil, you're dead type of smile. His teeth were 100 diamonds, and Bellatrix had a feeling they were not a girl's best friend. Then they moved. Erg. Bellatrix gurgled as the old muggle sword cut of her head. Cohen grinned. Mayor, this the bitch you were tailing about, he said, grinning as Potter run over holding a sword and a gun. It sure looked like the kid was learning how to really fight. Harry, Hermione stuck her head into his office. Ms. Blake wanted to have a word with you if you have time. Sure, send her in, Harry said quickly. Major. Ms. Blake, would you mind if I asked Ms. Granger to join us? Not at all, Harry replied. That is, if you'd like to. Hermione. Of course. Hermione smiled at Harry as she took a seat across from him. What can I do for you, Ms. Blake? I'd like to ask your aid in plotting a murder, she said seriously. Something that I believe is near and dear to all of us, she continued. Hogwarts. Hermione took a sharp breath. Go on, Harry said calmly. Several people have approached me about starting a new school for Muggle-born students, Daphne said. The hope was that we could allow students to stay home and commute to school using the doors that the goblins were thoughtful enough to provide. What about the families of the current Muggle-born students? Hermione asked. The response has been favorable, Daphne replied. Especially when we mentioned that the school would be placed in the middle of a military base. There have been questions about the security at Hogwarts. But Hogwarts is, Hermione cut off. Never mind. A safer place, a better environment, and the potential of spending more time at home. What about the pureblood reaction? We haven't spoken with anyone with strong ties in the wizarding world, Daphne said. We're hoping to keep it as quiet as possible until we're ready to act. I see. Harry's words sat in the room. Harry. Hermione broke the silence. She didn't like the lost look on her friend's face. Hogwarts was always a symbol of hope to me, Harry said after a few moments. It always represented an escape from my relatives. It was always more of a home than what I had on Privy Drive. I understand that, Major, but do it, Harry interrupted with his eyes closed. Work fast, I want it open before. We've got everything ready, Daphne said. We've just been waiting on your approval. Get as many purebloods as you can, Harry sighed. Killing their culture will go a long way towards completing our long-term plans. Good work, Ms. Blake. Thank you, Major, she said sadly. But after all this, do you think you could call me Daphne? Yes, of course, Daphne. And please call me Harry. Thank you, Harry, Daphne said. Perhaps we can rehabilitate Hogwarts if everything goes well. Perhaps, Harry said slowly. Could you spare a few more minutes of your time? Of course, Daphne said quickly. Could you put up a few more secrecy charms, Hermione? Harry said to his friend. Yes, Harry. Hermione spent several minutes casting every privacy and anti-eavesdropping charm she knew. What's this all about? Daphne asked with a curious frown. Ms. Blake. Hermione broke off and shot Harry a pleading look. We have a proposal for you, Harry said easily. One we hope you'll give every due consideration. I need quiet, Dumbledore said loudly. Thank you. I have spoken with Harry about his plan to face Voldemort on the field of battle. Did you get him to change his mind? Molly asked quickly. The woman was close to tears. No, Dumbledore said, but I have managed to get him to agree to something else. Win or lose, survive or perish, the order will stand with him. Everyone was deafened by the voices of their companions, each one trying to be heard over the others. Silence. Dumbledore's voice boomed. I will not require you to stand by me in what may be a hopeless fight, but I will ask it. Who will stand with me? Who will stand with Harry? Who among us will put an end to the darkness that is covering our nation? I will. Arthur was the first to stand. Molly, I want you to take the children someplace safe. You can't ask me to leave you, Arthur, the woman wailed. I've loved you since our 5th year, Arthur said tenderly. And if it weren't for the children I'd never dream of sending you away. Please, Molly, if I'm going to die then at least let me face my end knowing that you're safe. Yes, Arthur, the woman sobbed. I'll be there. Remus was next. James and Sirius would never let me hear the end of it if I didn't go, not to mention what Lily would say if I let her son do this without me. I've got no place better to be. In ones and twos, the majority of the order put up their hands and volunteered. The end was coming and they were determined to face it with a smile. You wanted to see me, Minister? Madam Bones asked. I want your men ready to arrest the winners after the battle between Potter and you-know-who, Fudge said firmly. We can't let this threat to the wizarding world continue. You want me to arrest Harry Potter if he defeats Voldemort? Madam Bones asked emotionlessly. Yes, Fudge agreed. On what charge? We'll deal with that later. Fudge waved it off like it was unimportant. The important thing is to get him quickly and to keep him away from the press until I've had a chance to get the correct story to the public. Minister, you do realize that Potter has more men than I do, are you not? What? Fudge squeaked. How? I've had my people keeping track of the guards in Diagon Alley, Madam Bones said. Right now I can account for triple the amount of people I have at my disposal, including hit wizards. Call in the retired Aurors, Fudge snapped. I've been activating the reserve, Bones continued. And asking the others to remain on standby. So what's the problem? Fudge demanded. I've been getting noncommittal replies from several of them, and outright refusals from others. Amelia replied. It didn't make much sense to me until one of my former Aurors told me something. What? Fudge asked with growing dread. She told me that the wizarding world had abandoned her, tossed her aside like garbage. Amelia said coldly. She told me that as far as she was concerned, that we could all rot. Muggle-born. Along with a good portion of my Aurors, Madame Bones agreed. She also told me something else. Let's have it, Fudge sighed. She told me the Harry Potter had accepted her and that she'd stand with him, Amelia said with a small smile at the minister's discomfort. I've done a bit of checking and I've found that nearly every Muggle-born and half-blood former or below the age of 60 has joined Harry Potter's forces. And that a good portion of the purebloods have also joined them. Purebloods? Fudge asked sickly. We're a close-knit family, Bones explained. You don't forget people who have risked their lives to save yours. Will that be all, Minister? Yes, Madam Bones, Fudge said slowly. That will be all. Let's go get some ice cream, Harry, Hermione said suddenly. Her friend had been uncharacteristically silent since their meeting with Ms. Blake. You go ahead, Harry muttered. I'd rather not go alone, Hermione said. Please. I'll send Mundy, Harry said without looking up. And maybe a few of the new men. Harry, please, Hermione begged. What's wrong? Hogwarts, Harry breathed. Oh, I can't believe, quote, it might not work out like that, Hermione said gently. If all goes well then we can connect the goblin doors up to the new school so that students can go back and forth. You really think the governors will allow that? I really believe that if all goes according to plan that they won't have a choice, Hermione said firmly. Not after the decrees that Fudge rammed down their throats. If everything goes well then we won't be killing Hogwarts, we'll be saving it. Really? Harry asked hopefully. Hogwarts is too valuable to drop, Hermione said firmly. Just the library would, quote. That's my girl, Harry said with a laugh. Bet you thought the whole thing up just so you could find a way to keep the library in use. It's a valuable resource, Hermione tried to defend herself. Come on. Harry stood and offered Hermione his arm. Let's go get something to eat. And then we can get some ice cream, Hermione said firmly as she took his arm. Okay. Of course. Augusta, Madam Bones greeted the old woman as she walked through the door into the Longbottom home. Thank you for having me. You're always welcome here, Amelia, Neville's grandmother replied. What brings you here? My niece is missing her boyfriend for one, Amelia said with a smile. Where have you hidden young Neville? He's off with his grandfather, Augusta replied. They're bonding. Finally told him, huh? It was long past time, Augusta sighed. My little baby grandson became a man overnight. They do that, Amelia agreed with a smile. Neville and Alistair will be back for supper if you'd like to speak with them. Until then, would you be so good as to join me for tea? Of course, Augusta. Good, it gets so lonely around here with my boys out of the house. Dangerous you say? Very, Fudge agreed. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Potter and his men plan to go after the Muggle world after they've rolled up the Wizarding world. Something must be done then, the man in the gray suit said quickly. Since you have all that experience dealing with Potter, did you say his name was? Yes, Potter, Fudge agreed. Well, since you've got all that experience dealing with Potter, what do you suggest we do? I think it best that we wait until he's had a chance to deal with you-know-who, Fudge said with a wink. And then? Afraid I don't, the man in the gray suit said with a frown. Sorry, who? You know, Fudge said quickly. The dark thingy. Volume. You know. Fudge waved his hands helplessly. Voldemort. Close enough, Fudge agreed. As I was saying, we wait until they've had a chance to fight and then you take the winner with one of those, nuts I believe you call them. Nuts maybe. Yes, that's it. Have no fear, Minister, the man in the gray suit. I'll personally make sure that Potter gets what's coming to him after he's done with the fight. Excellent, Fudge purred. You know, I never hated the Muggle world like some of my fellows. Oh, yes, unlike most wizards I know how valuable Muggles can be if you find the right one to talk to. Glad to hear you say that, Minister, the man in the gray suit replied. You don't know how much I like to hear things like that. You know, you do a good job for me and I might be persuaded to put a word in the Prim Minister's ear about you. Be still, my heart, the man in the gray suit said dryly. What do you think about? So what do you want to do now? Harry asked. I guess we could. Hermione cut off at the shout. Harry's hand instinctively dropped to the butt of his pistol as he turned. Ron, he yelled back cheerfully. How have you been? Glad I found you, mate, Ron said breathlessly. Been walking up and down this street hoping to run into you. Hello, Hermione. Hello, Ron, the girl replied. I'm with you, Harry, Ron said firmly. Till the end. What are you talking about, Ron? Harry asked with a frown. Mum's been keeping a close eye on me, Ron explained. Or I'd have been here to join you sooner. Only got away now 'cause she's been with Dad all day. I heard them talking and I know what your plan is. I won't let you face the end without me, Harry. I'm with you, to the end. Just what do you think is going to happen, Ron? Harry asked oddly. You're going to take Voldemort down with you, Ron said tightly. Harry, we've been friends since that first year on the train, might as well be together in the end. Ron, come with us, Hermione said with a long-suffering sigh. We'll explain things. Hermione, what? You boys always have to be so dramatic, an annoyed Hermione interrupted. What makes you think I'd allow Harry to go off and get himself killed? Didn't know you were here too, Ron muttered. Figured you were safe at home. So you were going to get yourself killed with Harry without me? Hermione's voice took on a dangerous tone. Didn't really think it through, Ron offered weakly. Just like Ron, Harry laughed. Comes up with a course of action and damn the details. HMPH. Hermione couldn't hide the smile growing on his face. It's good to see you, Ron. Let's get a table at that cafe, Harry suggested. Settle things there. Whatever you think is best, mate, Ron agreed. Just know that you're not talking me out of this. You go, we go. The three of them found a table and made their orders. First thing you need to know is that I'm not looking to take Voldemort down with me, Harry said. I wouldn't be getting in this fight if I didn't think I would be able to win. But the Order, you're getting your information from the Order? Hermione asked incredulously. Well, they do have Dumbledore, Ron muttered. Dumbledore is a good man, but he doesn't have what it takes to win a war, Harry said. I still want to be a part of this, mate, Ron maintained stubbornly. Harry caught Hermione's eye and motioned towards the bathroom with his chin. I'll be back in a few minutes, Hermione said. I just have to go powder my nose. Hermione and I have gotten closer in the last few months, Harry said to his friend. Good on you, mate, Ron said with a grin. And the fight isn't as safe as I've led her to believe, Harry continued. Don't get me wrong, I think we'll win, but battle is never a safe place to be, Ron said solemnly. Hermione doesn't know, but she's not going to be on the front line, Harry continued. And I feel better if I knew there was someone I could trust watching her. Keep her from fighting and to protect her if everything goes wrong, Ron said slowly. You can count on me, mate. I knew I could, Ron, Harry said thickly. Shush, she's coming back, Ron hissed. Our drinks get here yet? Hermione asked brightly. Not yet, Harry replied. The three friends talked for the next couple of hours and caught up on everything that had happened since they'd last seen each other at the end of the school year. I gotta go, Ron said with a glance at the clock. I'll see you at your building in a week. In a week, Harry agreed. Well? Hermione asked after Ron was out of the earshot. I told him that he'd be your bodyguard, Harry said with a smile. You utter bastard, Hermione said in shock. Ron will stay safe so long as I do. Is that it? Never thought of that, Harry said with a sly grin. Sorry, Hermione, looks like you're not going to be there for the battle after all. I'll get you for that, Potter, Hermione growled. You'll try. An. Had planned to use Ron a lot more than I did. Omake about that is below. Omake. They try to grow up so fast, and just where do you think you're going? McLean demanded. To the battle, the little girl replied. No you don't, You remember what I told you about that? That you're a smelly old fossil that needs to recapture your youth before the icy grip of death drags you to the underworld? Go to your room. Omake. Below was written before I thought things through. Was going to have the ministry crew join Harry before the story took on a life of its own. Was going to include Ron until I started thinking about Molly Weasley and I came to the conclusion that there was no way that she'd allow one of her children to go off to fight. Especially not one of her youngest babies. What happened? Harry swallowed the lump in his throat as he looked down at the body of his oldest friend. Lieutenant Weasley insisted on going in first. The men avoided Harry's eye. He kicked down the door and they hit him with a hex, didn't even have time to get a spell of his own off. I see, Harry nodded. Who are they? We think these are the men who killed Lieutenant Weasley. The troop indicated the line of prisoners. Okay. Harry nodded. Shoot them. Yes sir, the men nodded. Ron snuck through the front door of his house trying not to make any noise and hoping that his absence hadn't been noted. I was wondering when you'd be back, his father's voice echoed in the dark room. Hey Dad. Speak with Harry. Yeah Dad, Ron agreed. I'm not staying out of this, they're my best mates. What did Harry say? His father asked simply. He wanted me to keep an eye on Hermione, Ron replied. Said he trusted me to keep her safe and to keep her out of the battle. I see. Dad? Have a seat son, Arthur suggested as he turned the lights on with a wave of his wand. Ever had a glass of good scotch? Charlie gave me something when I came home this year, Ron said. Said it was a toast to Sirius. Charlie is a good boy but he has terrible taste, Arthur said with a laugh. Arthur pulled out a bottle and poured 3 fingers of scotch into 2 snifters. How would you like it? Whichever way you drink it, Ron replied. With a splash of water then, Arthur agreed. Son. I should have had this talk with you after the ministry but I'm afraid that I let your mother talk me out of it. I understand Dad, Ron said. Mum can be a bit. She can, can't she? Arthur agreed. But she only does it because she loves you. She just can't take the fact that you're becoming a man. She wants to keep her babies safe in. Yeah. Ron. Arthur took a sip. I'm not going to try to talk you out of going to the fight, and I'm not going to let your mother keep you here when the time comes. You're not? I'm not. I'm going to talk with you and let you make your own decisions. The first rise was just starting to reach its peak when I was your age. Arthur's eyes lost their focus as he started to speak. But it always seemed distant, like something that couldn't affect me. That all changed when... Sir. McLean stuck his head into Harry's office. Lieutenant Longbottom here to see you. Send him in. Lieutenant Longbottom reporting for duty sir, Neville said mechanically. You're a bit early aren't you Neville? Harry asked. Got another 2 days by my count. Not really, Neville said. Broke a couple laws and bonded with my granddad. How's your hand? 100%, Neville said proudly. I also brought you a gift. Oh, take a look, Neville said as he tossed a folder full of papers onto the table. Harry read the top paper. Can't say I'm surprised. He's a bastard, Neville said simply, but look at the next packet. All of them? Harry asked gleefully. All in one place and just begging to be roasted, Neville confirmed. I want this one Harry. Got a plan? Go in at dawn, kill the guards, light a fire, and pull out the marshmallows. Take some beer and give me a call when the brats are done, Harry said after a moment of thought. Take McLean, have him choose the men. Thanks Harry. What are friends for Neville? Neville walked out of Harry's office. Feel like having a bit of fun Sergeant. Always up for a party, McLean agreed. What's up sir? The Major was kind enough to give us a mission, Neville said. Voldemort's vampires have all gathered in one of the safe houses. Do tell, McLean said with a smile. What's the plan? We go in at dawn, we kill the guards, we set the place on fire, and we break out the beer and have a barbecue. Shall I send a runner out to get the food? Gather up a group of men to help with the setup too, Neville ordered. Don't know if we want to do this alone. Wouldn't be sporting to leave the men out of it, McLean agreed. I'll get everything ready. Glad you could take the time to meet with me, the man in the gray suit said with a grin. I do work for you, Hermione replied with a matching grin. True. So what did you want to hear? I don't have any information I need you to get at the moment. The man in the gray suit said. I have information to share. Fudge came to me with an interesting proposal. Oh, he had the wonderful idea of having my people kill the winner of your boyfriend's contest? He's not. What did he ask you to do? Use Nux on the winner to prevent Harry Potter from completing his conquest of the wizard and muggle world. Moron. True. But it does support what we've said in the past, Hermione mused. Any word on our request? Still working on it, the man in the gray suit replied. The PM is holding off on making a decision till the last minute. Does he know about this latest incident? Not yet. Figured I'd speak with you first to make sure I had all the information I could get. Is there anything you'd like me to add when I speak with him later? While not as dramatic as your meeting with him, Hermione began. Fudge also met with Madam Bones. Director of Magical Law Enforcement? Yes, go on. He had a similar request for her, Hermione said. Wanted her to arrest Harry, said they'd figure out the charges later. That might help, he mused. One more request. What is it? Could you spare a few magical guards to protect a few VIPs for up to several months? I'll see what I can do. Harry came down to meet Neville and his men as they prepared to go off on their raid. Just wanted to add something to the instructions I gave earlier. What is it? Neville asked nervously. Call Captain Hart after the coals get right, Harry said with a yawn. He tells me that he's got several famed grill masters under his command and has been good enough to volunteer them. Will do, Neville agreed. And Hermione tells me that Pineru is a cook of some renown, Harry added. And relayed his request that we have some space ready for him. I'll take care of everything, Harry, Neville promised. I'm going to bed, Harry announced. Wake me up when noon arrives. Have a good night's sleep, Harry. Good hunting, Neville. You heard the Major. Neville's voice hardened. This operation is going to be a bit more complex than we'd originally thought, so we're going to have to be quicker and more careful about preparing the site than we'd originally planned. Don't worry, sir, McLean said. Like you said, all we gotta clean up is a few Death Eaters and some sleeping vampires. Yeah, Neville agreed. But are we going to have enough beer for everyone? I'll send a man out to hijack a truck later, sir. Good man. You sure you're okay with sending him out on his own? Hermione asked Harry as they watched Neville and the men leave. He's a good leader, Harry said, and I have every confidence in him. That's not what I asked. No, it isn't, Harry agreed. If we're going to be honest, I'm not sure I'm okay with trusting my men with anyone that isn't me. But, right. How'd the meeting with the man in the gray suit go? Fudge tried to get him to kill you, Hermione replied. Still no word on the issue. Still waiting the PM's approval. Be sure to pass on that I can't be sure of creating a lasting peace if he doesn't agree to my request, Harry said. Tell them that I'd be more than willing to stand guard forever, but I'll pass it on, Hermione agreed quickly. Do you really think it will work? That what will work? Harry asked. The long-term plans or the short-term? The long-term. I hope so. Neville crept up behind the guard and silently looped a bit of thin wire around the man's neck. Turning quickly so that they were back to back, Neville bent over, causing the Death Eater's feet to lift off the ground. The end of the man's panicked gurgling brought a smile to Neville's face and let him know that things were finished. Slowly easing the man to the ground, Neville drew his dagger and ensured that the man was dead with a quick thrust through the left eye. Why didn't you just use the knife? McLean asked quietly as he emerged from the shadows. Never could get the hang of finding the third and fourth, Neville admitted with an embarrassed frown. Get with me later, McLean said sympathetically. I'll show you the trick to it. Don't think my cousin knows that one, so it's understandable that you're having a few problems. Cousin? Yeah, good to know that there's a few more of us in the world, Just reminds me of a joke Harry told me, Neville said. Sir, it's a trap. There's two of them, McLean finished. Should have asked you this before, Neville said slowly. The other guards? Dead, and I have the men arranging the Willy Pete as we speak. Very good, Sergeant, Neville said with a grin. One per coffin? Just like you said, McLean agreed. Got something else to show you, sir. What is it? Just look behind the corner, McLean said with a grin. I know you wanted to do it yourself. But at least it was done by one of the family, Neville finished as he looked down at what was left of the Lestranges. Be sure to get a picture for Gran. Will do, sir. Madam Bones. What is it? She snapped. Her niece's boyfriend was risking his life and the girl had locked herself in her room and refused to come out until she was sure that Neville was going to be safe. Flow for you. Tell them I'm busy, it's Mr. Longbottom. Put him through, Amelia said quickly. Hello Amelia, Neville said with a smile. Have some spare time? Everything went off without a hitch then. Yep, even got a bonus out of it. The Lestranges had the misfortune of crossing one of my men. Which one? McLean. Ah, so what can I do for you? Just hoping that you could take a few hours off, Neville said. We're having a small gathering and I was hoping that you and Susan could attend. I'll be there, Amelia promised. What's the location? Bit of land 2 miles north of what used to be the Parkinson place, Neville replied. Guess they thought it'd be safe to hide somewhere we'd already checked. Guess so, Amelia agreed. I'll get Susan and bring her over. I'll save a beer for you, Neville said with a grin. Later Amelia. Bye Neville. Amelia shut off the flow and burst into a fit of giggles. I love that boy. Amelia rose from her desk and paused only long enough to tell her assistant that she was taking the rest of the day off. A few short minutes later she was standing in front of her niece's door trying to get the young girl to come out. Go away, Susan sobbed. I'm not coming out. Poor Neville will be so disappointed that you couldn't come to his little party, Amelia said regretfully. Maybe Hannah is available. I'm sure she could think of something that would cheer him up. What? Susan was suddenly standing in the open door. He's okay. He's fine, dear, Amelia said. Just like I told you he would be. Wait here, Susan ordered. I gotta get ready. Just put on a light robe and come with me. But I have to look my best, Susan protested. It'll be too hot if you wear any of your more fashionable robes, and after what he did this morning, he's probably covered in soot. Amelia spent a few minutes examining her niece. Get rid of the tear tracks but leave your hair messed up. But, just throw your arms around him and pull him into a beep the moment you see him, Amelia advised. And he won't care what you're wearing. Well, if he were the sort that cared about that sort of thing. Look at it this way. Would you rather spend time around Neville or would you rather spend it here getting ready? Let's go. A.N. Move on, nothing to see here. Omake by Cadence Cascade. Disclaimer. This is in no way my fault. No sleep and reading way. Way too much of the excellent fanfiction this group produces did this. To me. Also, not baited. Now, McLean growled, debrief me on Mission Wilderness hike. Okay Grandpa. Start with when you geared up, so as I can make sure you remembered to bring everything, suggested McLean. Mom went to the store and bought us sleeping bags and everything that was on the list our troop leader Tiffany handed out. What kind of artillery did the newest idiot recommend? Interrupted McLean. Oh Grandpa, she really was an idiot. She didn't recommend any weapons at all, so Mom said to bring the standard set plus extra ammunition and at least 2 extra knives. Good girl, muttered McLean under his breath. I always knew I raised her right, even if she did go off and marry the stupidest man on the planet. Mom drove us to the meeting spot at the national park and she gave us an extra grenade for just in case. Tiffany, our troop leader, led the way on the hike. We hiked for approximately 2 miles. We were going really slow and Tiffany and the new girls that weren't here when you were our troop leader still couldn't keep up. Oh, I want to tell the next part. Interrupted the younger girl. Her older sister pouted for a moment but acquiesced quickly when she noticed her grandfather growing impatient. The tiny girl faced her grandpa with an angelic grin. Well, we stopped and make camp after we posted a 10-yard perimeter and set up 11 traps for anyone that would try to sneak up on us. Good, always at least one more trap than expected, nodded McLean agreeably. We divided up the night watch and built a campfire and roasted marshmallows and hot dogs and sang some songs. Tiffany didn't know about the night watches because she made us all go in our tents, but we snuck out to do our duty, reported the smaller girl. Here the older sister butted in. At midnight the first attack happened. The watch brownie on duty woke us all up, even Tiffany, and told us a bear was coming. A bear? Girl, there are no bears in England, McLean said in bemused askance. Glaring at her older sibling, the younger sister again took over. We know, or at least we do now. The enemy had gotten tangled in the traps set up around the perimeter. We took our guns and I am the only one who remembered to grab a grenade and... Only one of you grabbed a grenade? I've taught you girls better than that, McLean roared. The little girl went on quickly, all thoughts of bragging gone. The not a bear guy was really upset and he was yelling with his mouth wide open, so I yelled cover, pulled the pin, and threw it in his mouth. The police said the DNA came back as a paroled pedo-something guy that had slipped from his chawn. When Mr. Mean ol pedo-something guy exploded, Tiffany fainted and we couldn't wake her up, so we designated her tent as the infirmary tent and posted twice the amount of guards around the perimeter. Wise, McLean agreed, calming down at the report of at least some competence. Go on. At sunrise, one of the perimeter guards found a nest of rattlesnakes and reported it to the command tent. We took a delegation and negotiated. Negotiated? Rattlesnakes? McLean queried. Yep. Captured all we could find and blew up the nest with some more grenades. We milked the ones we captured for venom, then shot them too. Gonna use it on our knives. Come to find out, someone's pets got free and started breeding, but we took care of it. Excellent work, girls. Anything else happen? McLean asked. No, said the older sister slowly, just that Tiffany isn't our brownie troop leader anymore. The doctor said something about breaks with reality. Are you sure you won't come back and be our troop leader again, Grandpa? Omake. A good officer knows when to. Decided not to use this. Truth potions make it unnecessary, but it popped into my head. I'm not sure what gave me the idea for this. Might have been something Kipling wrote. Take a walk, sir, Smythe suggested. Why? Harry asked with a frown. Sir, there are things we can do to convince him to talk, Smythe said slowly. A good sergeant knows when it's time to take an enemy behind the rocks, and a good officer knows when to look the other way. Aunt Amelia, Susan began in a low voice. Can I ask you something? What is it, dear? Why is everyone so happy? Susan whispered. I just heard that Harry is going to go on the Wizard wireless news service and announce his location with a dare to the other side. And why is everyone so happy? Susan broke and tears began flowing down her face. They could all die tomorrow, but they're laughing and having fun. Why? Why aren't they more worried? It's because... Amelia cut off when she saw Harry waving for silence. One moment, dear. Thought I should get this out before you're all too drunk or hungover to remember it, Harry called out. Madam Bones, you and Susan are going to have to leave now or stay until after the battle is finished. I believe we'll stay, Amelia said simply. All right, Harry agreed. A lot of commanders would talk about how we were all dead and the fight would be our chance to earn our lives, or about how we were a merry band of brothers. I think that would cut into our drinking time, so I'm going to skip it. The men gave a rousing cheer in response to Harry's statement. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about my plan, and then we can go back to the business of getting plastered. The men gave another cheer. The goth or go to hell plan is to fight and fall back through the goblin door and call in an arc light on the wankers. It would be rude not to after they went to all the trouble of bunching up like that. The men laughed. If they put up a ward that stops the door, then I've led you into a trap and my orders are to fight to the last. The men laughed again at that. What's the row? McLean called out. I'm tempted to order no quarter, Harry replied. But I'd also like to have a few more prisoners for a bit of tactical intelligence to use in case we fail to cut off the head. Any man that comes into close combat, that is to say any man that comes to within 300 yards without signaling his intention to surrender, has forfeited that right. Enemy wounded are to be cared for if supplies allow, if not, that's their problem. 3 cheers for the major, one of the men yelled. That's your answer, Amelia said to her niece as the men cheered. They have confidence that Harry knows what he's doing and contempt for their foe. They can't even comprehend the possibility that they might lose. I can, Susan said with a shiver. All I can think of is what if Harry's wrong? What if Neville dies? What if Voldemort takes over? Pretty dumb, huh? If you're dumb, then so am I, Amelia consoled the girl. And so is Harry, unless I miss my guess. Worrying about what might happen is the job of the commander, so is pretending that there's nothing to worry about. Fear is contagious, especially if the fear is shown by the commander. Harry has to project an image of complete confidence or the men might worry. If the men worry, then all could be lost. How did? That's why you never got scared, Susan said with dawning realization. That's why the other Aurors say you've got ice water in your veins. And that's why they call me the ice bitch, Amelia said with a grin. I do get scared sometimes, but I never show it. Susan, Neville said with a grin as he made his way towards his girlfriend. There you are. How are you enjoying the party? It's great, Susan said with what confidence she could muster. Glad you like it, Neville said jovially. Got your beer here, Amelia. Thank you, Neville, Amelia replied. Would you two excuse me for a bit? I'd like to mingle a bit. Okay, Aunt Amelia, Susan said, shooting the woman a grateful look. So, were you planning to do anything next week? Neville asked nervously. If you weren't, then I was thinking we could do something that is. I'd love to have a date, Susan agreed. We could go to a show and have dinner after. If you like. Could you wear your uniform? Susan asked hopefully. I'd like to show you off. She blushed at the last part. Show me off? Neville asked in shock. I'm something to show off? You're a hero and you made teen witches most men just after Harry, Susan replied. Of course you're something to show off. I'll be sure to look my best then, Neville agreed. Lieutenant Longbottom, a man in a black uniform, said with a grin as he walked up to the young couple. Some of the boys made up a little surprise for you. What is it? Neville asked with a grin. Sorry sir, Sergeant Murphy, Royal Artillery. We talked to the doc and managed to get your old hand's ashes. Go on. You know how the Major wants to kick things off with a big time on target before calling in the CAS. Yeah. Well, it took some doing, but each shell in the tot has a bit of your hand in it, the man said proudly. They say that a time on target is like the hand of God coming down to smite the bastards on the receiving end. Well, this one will be the hand of Lieutenant Longbottom coming down to smite everything in its path. Neville's face contorted and he burst into laughter. Good work, Sergeant, Neville cheered, and pass on my thanks to everyone. I will, sir, the artilleryman agreed. Ma'am. He gave Susan a respectful nod before leaving to rejoin his unit. They look cute together, Hermione said as she observed Neville and Susan. Do you think it will work? They seem to like each other, Harry ventured. Not that. Do you think your plan to deal with Voldemort will work? I hope so, it all depends on him showing up. Might have to call him a coward a couple times to bring him, but I see a positive result even if he doesn't show up. Because his men get stomped and you mentioned that he was too much of a coward to face you? Hermione said with a grin. I thought propaganda was part of my shop. May not be my responsibility, but I'm not going to ignore an opportunity if it falls into my lap, Harry replied. Do you really think the wards might shut down the door? None of them bothered it when we tested it, but you know what they say. It'll break as soon as you need it, Hermione sighed. Yup. You'll really. Don't die, Harry. Don't intend to, Harry said easily. Why don't we find some place quiet to have our meal? Hermione suggested. I just want to have a bit of alone time with you. Sergeant Major, Harry called out. Sir, your lovely granddaughter and myself are going to have a picnic in that stand of trees, Harry said. Disturb us at your peril. Have fun, sir, Smythe said with a grin. The two friends gathered up their meals and disappeared. Susan watched all this with a nervous smile. It took only a few minutes to make up her mind and she walked up to the grizzled old man that had seen Harry off. Sergeant Major? Susan said uncertainty. Something I can do for you, lass? Smythe asked with a smile. Neville and I are going to go find some place more private too, Susan's voice firmed. See that we aren't disturbed, please. I'll take care of everything, he agreed kindly. And I may have noticed a nice spot north of here that you might want to take a peek at. Thank you, she said with a dazzling grin. Skipping back to Neville's side, she took him by the arm and led him confidently away from the party. Just us old folks now, McLean said with a grin. I'm not that old, Amelia said as she walked up to the group of NCOs. Just us old folks and a pretty young lady then, Smythe amended. Brings back memories though, doesn't it, McLean? A few, the other man admitted. Care for another drink, Amelia? I'd be delighted, she replied. Thank you. You really think he can deliver? I do, sir, the man in the gray suit agreed. And all of our projections agree that his plan has a decent chance of working. It's that bad then? Their society really is a breeding ground for terrorists. As things are, yes. Are you planning to be there when he has his battle? Planning to be close, sir, the man in the gray suit said quickly. I'll be in the rear with the gear, as they say. Then here is what I want you to do. You will first ensure that the chief terrorist has been eliminated and that his organization has been rendered harmless. Provided Major Potter accomplishes that task, you are to give him my blessing. The words you are to use is that I order him to cleanse the wizard government of corruption and any remaining collaborators. He is then to act as a temporary military governor until such time as a new government can be set up. Yes, sir, thank you, sir. As to the other matter we discussed. It's almost a shame to do that to him after all the good work he's done for us. Yes, sir, in fact I have several places I'd like to use a man like him. That girl of his also, I'm told. Yes, sir, they make a very useful team. I sense a but here. But a few years of polish could make them even better, the man in the gray suit said with a sigh. And as things are, there is nothing critical. If something comes up, then we can reassess our position. Very good, you have my instructions. Yes, sir, I'll make them happen. Excellent, you are free to go then. Thank you for your time, sir, the man in the gray suit said as he prepared to leave the room. One more thing. Yes, sir? Tell Major Potter that I wished him good luck. I will, sir. Thank you, sir. Come on, son, Arthur said. We're going downstairs. Why? The family is going to spend some time with your mother before we leave. Dumbledore wants everyone to be in position early. Everything will be fine, Dad, Ron said. I trust Harry. Tell that to your mother, Arthur ordered. Do your best to emphasize that your job is to guard Hermione and to keep her away from anything dangerous. Right, Ron agreed. Even the twins have agreed to behave. Well, behave for them. Everything will be fine, Ron repeated himself. Harry knows what he's doing. I hope so, Arthur sighed. I thought Dumbledore knew what he was doing, but... It all got confusing after Harry broke away, Ron agreed. I just wish things could go back to being the way they were before. I do too, son. Now let's go. Put a smile on your face and go downstairs. Ron took a deep breath and went down to meet his mother. Did you wash your hands, Ron? Molly asked with false calm. Yeah, Mum, Ron agreed. Good, have a seat. Do you want mashed potatoes? I'd love some, Mum. Bill, could you? I'll get him for you, Mum, Bill agreed. They ate the meal in silence. The family's weak attempts at conversation did little to draw Molly out of her melancholy, and the woman looked to be close to tears the entire night. Everything will be fine, Mum. Ron tried to reassure her. I'll be with Hermione and the others won't even be close to the fight. What about Harry? Molly demanded. Harry has a few hundred men with him, Ron said quickly. You know what they did in Diagon Alley, everything will be fine. He's right, Molly, Arthur said softly. Oh, Arthur, Molly dissolved into tears. Don't let any of my boys get hurt. I lost my brothers and I just can't lose my sons. They'll be fine, Arthur persisted. I'll make sure nothing can happen to them. Drop your cocks and pick up your socks, Smythe called out. We got ourselves a big day today, wake up you bastards. How can you be so cheerful after drinking so much, Sergeant Major? One of the men groaned. I'm a superior specimen of the male species, Smythe replied. For the rest of you apes, the Major was good enough to lay in a supply of hangover potions. I suggested that fighting with hangovers would be good for your souls, but you know what a soft heart the Major has. The men pushed themselves off the ground and crawled over to the promised potion. Here's the Major's intent, McLean. Yes, Sergeant Major. You're in charge of the sharpshooters. Take Lieutenant Longbottom and choose a few men. Skirmishers? Giants, Smythe corrected. I managed to find a dozen boys' rifles. Mind if I take a couple of them, ya palmy bastard? The Anzac Company Sergeant Major asked with a grin. Be good for the lads' souls to get some trigger time on Charlie the bastard. Be happy to help you in such a weighty spiritual matter, ya bloody Kiwi, Smythe replied politely. Thanks, Nig. No problem, Marty. You want us to form a combined unit, Sergeant Major? McLean asked. Be good for the LT's resume, Smythe said thoughtfully. Commanded a multinational team of blah blah blah. Got it, Sergeant Major. Moment of your time, Major Potter? What can I do for you, Captain Hart? This is Lieutenant Murphy, one of my platoon leaders. He's got a bit of an odd request for you. What is it, Lieutenant Murphy? You know what the haka is, Major. Afraid I've never heard of that term, Harry said regretfully. What is it? It's a kind of dance the boys would like to do before the battle starts, the Kiwi lieutenant explained. We were sort of hoping that you'd give your permission for us to perform it, sir. Do it, Harry agreed. But not until Voldemort decides to show up. I wouldn't want him to miss the show. Yes, sir, the man agreed. Thank you, sir. One more thing, Lieutenant Murphy, Harry said sharply. Yes, sir? Tell your men I'm good for 3 rounds if I find that the death wankers shat themselves because of your haka. I'll tell them, sir, he agreed with a grin. Be ready to pay up. It will be a pleasure, Lieutenant. Orders here, sir, McLean announced. Harry, my boy, Dumbledore said happily. So good to see you again. Dumbledore, Harry acknowledged the man. Good of you to make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Dumbledore replied. Are you still set on doing this alone? Because the Order and I would be more than happy to. Forget it, Harry interrupted. The Order is needed to guard the non-combatants. I am not willing to leave wives, children, and medical personnel unprotected. If you are, then. Well, you're not someone I want to have contact with. You're right, of course, Dumbledore agreed. Forgive me, but I hadn't thought about it in those terms. Nothing to forgive. Harry's smile was back. We all make mistakes. Madam Bones, Susan, and Hermione are going to accompany you. With any luck, we'll all be enjoying a cold one together in a few hours. Tell your men that I'm good for the first round, Dumbledore said grandly. And I'm good for the next, Amelia said as she walked up. I'll do that, Harry agreed. Now if you will excuse me, I have to make sure everything is ready before we go. Make sure she doesn't leave, Harry said firmly. Keep her in sight at all times unless she's in the bathroom, and then I want you to send someone along with her. Right, Ron agreed. You're going to pay for this, you know, Hermione said calmly. If I live. Harry shrugged. The man in the gray suit will be there with you, Hermione. Why don't we say I'm leaving you behind to lease with him? Why don't you pray to God I'm too worried to think up something really bad, Hermione retorted. Be careful, Harry, she added softly. She leaned in and gave him a chaste beep. Please be careful. I will be, Harry agreed firmly. See you both in a few. Later, mate. Goodbye, Harry. Let's get this show on the road, Harry said firmly. Tell the WWW where we'll be in 5 minutes and release one of the prisoners with a map and portkey coordinates. Yes, sir, Smythe agreed. They took their positions and waited. Sure they'll show? Best of many options, Harry agreed. If he was smart, he'd try hitting Diagon when it's soft, and wiping the place out. St. Mungo's would be another good target. Which is why you posted the guards, sir, Smythe reassured the young officer, and that would make him look even worse. True, Harry agreed. Unless he succeeded. Skirmishers report that they've started to arrive, McLean reported. Small mixed group of giants and wizards. Look like the party's starting. He's not here yet, Harry commented. How can you tell, sir? I usually get a headache when the bugger gets too close, Harry replied. Useful that. It can be, he agreed. For now, I want the men to be sporadic and ineffective, Sergeant Major, Harry commanded as he watched the Death Eater line approach the trench. Tom went to the trouble of gathering all of his forces for this little battle. I'd like to do him the favor of waiting till they're deep inside our anti-transport wards before we get the party into full swing. Oh, and Sergeant Major, check that the arty is ready, he added after a brief moment of thought. Nothing more embarrassing than calling for fire and not getting it. 5 miles from the scene, 32 of the 8-inch guns that made up the 4 batteries of the King's Own stood ready for what they thought was a night practice shoot. Right you are, sir, Smythe replied with a grin. Be ashamed to let them see the trap till it's too late. Have McLean start taking down the giants, Harry said after a moment of thought. I'd rather not have to deal with them if we go hand to hand. You heard him, McLean, Smythe said loudly. Have fun. McLean replied by pulling the trigger. 5 minutes later there wasn't a giant alive within 500 meters of the wire. McLean had spent some time finding out just how tall most giants were. The results showed in the field that was now packed with Voldemort's version of tanks. Giants. But for every weapon, there's a defense. Blocks of C4 with bags of roofing nails had been tied to 20-foot posts and set at about 20 feet apart. The nails and steel buckshot went through the giants like grapeshot through spit. Those giants that survived didn't last long. A .55 caliber bullet designed to punch through tanks went through giants' skulls without even slowing. A few bullets went on to punch through a couple of Death Eaters. Sort of a 2-for-1 bonus kind of thing. Looks like they're breaking off the attack, sir, Smythe said with a frown. Any idea why? It's because the chief bugger just arrived, Harry groaned. Tell the Kiwis that it's a go. Right, sir, Smythe agreed. Get to it, lads. The Death Eaters watched in confusion as a group of men left the protection of the trench and formed a line facing them. The lieutenant stepped out in front of his men and began calling out a chant. The men crouched and joined him while gesturing wildly. Several of the Death Eaters shifted nervously at the sight. That was what they were supposed to fight. Bloody savages, one of the men sneered with false confidence. Think their little dance scares us? A ragged cheer accompanied his pronouncement and they all turned back to their leader for some sign of how they were supposed to react. As he watched, Voldemort felt a chill go up his back. For the first time in his life, he wondered if it might not be a good idea to surrender. Or to retreat. Ruthlessly stomping down any uncertainty, he took a deep breath and prepared to order the men to attack. Voldemort took a deep breath and looked over his men. Attack, he hissed. Looks like they didn't enjoy the show half as much as I did. Smythe laughed at the Death Eaters. Tell the men that they may blow the mines and fire at will after the artillery strikes. They know, sir. Right, Harry agreed. Well, let's see this hand of God then. Smythe caught the eye of the artillery spotter and gave a slow, deliberate nod. You want me to have the medic give you something for that, sir? The Death Eaters, as they reckoned that the explosions that took out the giants were Harry's last gasp or that someone had gotten anxious and used their most effective charms on the subhuman monsters that their lord had recruited to bolster the ranks. Here they smirked, as a boy would, continued to advance, kicking aside bits of giant skull that littered the field around the massive bodies. A few paused in confusion as a sound, reminiscent of the Hogwarts Express, began come closer. The Death Eaters paused. Was this a new spell? The sound got closer and closer. The looks of confusion turned to shock and fear as the artillery shells began bursting above their heads, raining deadly shrapnel through their closely packed formations. The earth erupted and screamed its pain. Small and large plumes of dust, dirt and smoke raced heavenward. Unseen but heard were the bits of jagged metal and stones that whispered around and through the Death Eaters. Clouds, dirty, ragged clouds appeared as the sky seemed to roar back at the earth. The real man-killer had arrived. Air bursts exploded over the Death Eaters. Shrapnel rained down and reaped its deadly harvest of the Death Eaters. The werewolves, while able to heal quickly, couldn't cope with the demands that the jagged metal imposed. Mixed in with the were white phosphorus rounds, and while the smoke made the surviving Death Eaters choke, the glowing flakes burnt into their masks and robes and then into their skins. Vampires who were the true targets of the WP rounds burnt. While stakes, holy water and beheading will kill vampires, burning will do as well. The stench of burning flesh began to drift across the field. The last thing that went through Voldemort's mind as he watched in horror as his army shattered under the murderous barrage, was a chunk of metal with a bit of the ash from Neville's hand still clinging to it. Amidst all the smaller explosions, a greater one grew. Harry looked at McLean with a questioning look. Some of the arty boys got Big Bertha out of the British Gunnery Museum and wanted to see if some of the old shells would still work. A group of Death Eaters who were on the right flank of their mob had somehow managed to survive. They began to sidle off more to the right, hoping that they would be unnoticed. Their hope was for naught. The spotter, seeing someone getting away, took great delight in radioing back a new target. The chart operators did their thing with maps and slide rules and barked new figures. Battery of guns shifted their muzzles slightly and the gun bunnies began their choreographed dance that fed the guns 4 rounds a minute. A rate that preserved the life of the tubes but killed armies. Not for nothing were artillery called the voice of kings. The rain of explosions slowed and then came the silence. Screams that were unheard during the taut were now able to be heard. Snipers began to search out the survivors and the screams began to diminish as those screaming no longer needed aid, of any type. The world seemed to shift when the artillery struck and an unnatural silence came over the field of battle. The Death Eaters who had not entered the kill zone paused, frozen as their minds tried to process what had just happened. "Why aren't you firing?" McLean screamed. "Clear that field." "No need for the medic," Harry said with a grin. "My headache just disappeared." "Yes, sir," Smythe agreed. Dementors don't seem to be bothered much by anything but the Willy Pete, do they?" "No, sir," Smythe agreed. "You want me to give Major Rickenbacker a call?" "Yeah," Harry agreed. "Let's see if napalm works." "You heard him," Smythe said to the forward observer. The foe nodded and began whispering into his radio. A few seconds later, the shriek of jet engines using full military power deafened the defenders. Harry watched with an impassive smile as the two planes banked and headed towards their target. Two egg-shaped objects came out from under the wings of each plane and tumbled towards the group of disoriented Dementors. Harry watched in fascination as a wave of fire enveloped the sole remaining cohesive enemy unit. "Tell Major Eddie that I'd like to request a demonstration of what his planes can do," Harry said calmly. "At the time and place of his choosing, providing of course that it's now and in the field in front of us." "I'll pass it along, sir," Smythe agreed with a grin. "Bayonets after that?" "No party is complete without them." "Right you are, sir." Following the first two planes came a flight of tank killers flying nape of the earth. Trails of smoke ran down their bellies as the flight poured murderous fire into the field in front of the cheering Tommies. "I'd guess Puff will be next," Smythe said with a yawn. "Always good for morale." As if in reply to his words, the ponderous plane came into view, dropping its 200 candle power flares behind it. "Giving us a show," McLean commented. "No other reason to do that during the day." "Nice of them," Smythe agreed. Harry could almost hear the whir of the electric motors as they began to rotate the barrels of the three General Electric Gatling guns that armed the magnificent device. "Any time now." The tracers made it appear as if a line of fire joined the aircraft to the battlefield as the guns opened up. The 6,000 round per minute rate of fire immolated what little remained of the surviving enemy's forces, placing a bullet in every square inch. Harry drew his sword and put a whistle to his lips as the plane made its last pass. Drawing a deep breath, he blew a shrill note that cut through the noise of the battle. Over the top, he yelled, "Follow me." The men cheered as they assaulted through the field of battle, smashing and bayoneting everything in their path. Harry's chest was heaving when they reached the end of the destruction. "Skirmishers out," Harry commanded. "I want those bodies checked now." "I'm on it, sir," Smythe agreed as he began shouting his own orders. Harry's blood was singing as he watched his men jump to follow his orders. Surely there was no better feeling than felt when commanding men in battle. "Major," Lieutenant Murphy called out with a smile, "I've got a present for you." "What is it?" Harry asked with a wide smile. He was still high on the adrenaline and it was all he could do to stand still. "We found the chief wanker," Lieutenant Murphy said with a grin. "And it appears that he shat himself. Looks like you have a bet to pay off, sir." "Bowels released after he died," McLean said. "Not sure it had anything to do with that dance of yours." "That's not the way we're going to remember it, Sergeant," Harry disagreed. "Nor is it how we're going to report it. Sergeant Major Smythe." "Yes, sir." "Inform the men that I owe them a few rounds of drinks," Harry said seriously. "Compliments of Lieutenant Murphy." "I'll do that, sir," Smythe agreed. "We also found a couple of survivors," Murphy added. "How? Shrapnel's weird like that, sir," Smythe explained with a shrug. "You could be standing 3 feet away from the burst and not get a scratch, while another man could be on the other side of the field and take one in the face." "So how fate works," McLean agreed. "Fate may have saved them from the air and the arty," Harry said. "But it's not going to save them from a rope. Have the medics treat them. I wouldn't want them to die before I have a chance to kill them." "I'll see to it, sir. A.N. Thanks go to Rob Hetka, Dave Jarek for help with this chapter. Voldemort made the biggest mistake an insurgent can anyone tell me what that is? The mistake he made was to get into a conventional battle. That is a mistake that tends to be catastrophic. Case in point, the Tet Offensive, which allowed the U.S. military to slaughter the Viet Cong en masse. Another example, much as it pains me to use it, is any number of battles during the American Revolution, at least during the early part of the war. Ragtag bands don't tend to do well against professional armies. Voldemort scraped together his followers and came across an open field against fixed fortifications. That was also a major mistake. especially when his opponent had plenty of time to dial in Artie. Course, if he didn't show up then Harry would have won a propaganda victory. Vold was too much of a coward to show up. Wouldn't have been as good as what happened, but you take what you can get. Even then, a few major attacks on soft targets might have negated any of that. Omake by Haddonch. Sergeant First Grade Field Healer Dobby reporting as order, a voice said as it marched in. Hermione blinked, seeing a normal man walking through the door. A normal human with the name of a house elf. That was fun. Harry Potter. Good, I hear a loot of good about you. It's an honor to have you among us, Sergeant. Suddenly the human shrank down to his real house elf size. Dobby is so happy. Dobby believed nobody wanted him, so he joined the military. But Potter, the greatest wizard of them all, really wanted Dobby. Hermione sighed. Right. Another Omake by Haddonch. Lieutenant Dobby the Deathwing reporting as order, the young pilot said. Harry, I heard you the best combat pilot they had for years. It's good to have you among OU. He blinked in shock as the pilot turned into a crying and happy Dobby the house elf. Omake by Haddonch, but what happened to the girls? Hermione. So male squibs was sent off to military duty, she said and frowned. But where the females sent off to, she said. Meanwhile, and this is where we go before a fight, Mayor Potter, they're all 100 squib girls, the old man said. Harry frowned. The Countdown Ladies Pub and Whorehouse. Somehow he knew Hermione would kill him if he entered that place. Alternative. Omake, what happened to the girls? Xander Harris frowned. Where do Slayer and potential Slayer come from, he said, wondering. Giles cited. No idea. They just suddenly appear like magic, he said. Meanwhile, Buffy held a stake that was giving of sparks of magic. She grinned now. She could go to Hogwarts. Omake by Haddonch. Harry blinks as a big airplane suddenly opened the bomb hatches and a rain of nuts of every kind starts to rain down. What is going on? Sorry, Mayor, the Ministry of Magic put a haze to force the Prime Minister to nuke us if we were victorious. Lucky for us, He said. Nuts us. Harry blinks. Then grab a handful of salty nuts and starts to eat. While plotting fudge doom. Do you got some beer? Major Potter. The man in the gray suit said with a smile. I'm told you succeeded? Yes, I did, Harry agreed. You wanted to speak with me about something? You've confirmed his death. I've seen his body, Harry said. He came back once, not sure if he can do it again. Good enough, he waved off Harry's concerns. I have a message to you from the PM. Yes. You are to root out any corrupt officials and Death Eaters that might be infesting the Ministry of Magic, the man in the gray suit said firmly. You are then to assume the temporary position of military governor until such time as an interim civilian government can be put into place. Thank you, Harry said calmly. Sergeant Major. Yes, sir. I need to speak with you. Coming, sir. One more thing, Major, the man in the gray suit said with a feral grin. What is it? Catch. He tossed a small bag at Harry's chest. Enjoy. Mixed nuts. I promised Fudge I'd use nuts on the winner, he explained. I always keep my word. Hey. Harry ripped open the package. Right. What do you need, sir? Smythe asked after the man in the gray suit had left. Madam Bones and the order still tied up? Yes, sir, Smythe replied. You want us to sit on them till we get things done? I want you to sit on them, Harry corrected, under the command of Lieutenant Longbottom. Sir, it's you or McLean, Harry said with a smile, and I want McLean with me when I do this. And you want Longbottom to keep his hands clean, Smythe sighed. Sure I can't talk you out of this? Sure you trust someone else to babysit your lovely granddaughter and that green lieutenant of mine? He's not that bad, sir. He's an excellent combat commander, Harry agreed. Credit to his unit. But still green, Smythe agreed. I'll do it, sir, but I don't like it. If it makes you feel better, Sergeant Major, neither do I. Good luck, sir. Carry out your orders, Sergeant Major, Harry replied. See you soon. Sure you don't want me to do this for you, sir? No, Harry said sharply. I need to keep the regiment clean. Get up, you lot. Smythe turned away from his young commander and began yelling at the troops. Column of twos. Put the prisoners in the center. Smythe took his place at the side of the formation and gave one last sad glance back to his commander before marching the men through the goblin doorway. McLean. Yes, sir? Ready to change the world? Ready to change our little part of it, sir, McLean agreed with a grin. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Hermione was standing nervously in front of the doorway when the men began to arrive, nervously waiting for Harry's return. Neville. Susan screamed joyfully as she threw herself into her boyfriend's arms. I was so worried. Don't be, Neville said with a smile. It's over, it's all over. You mean? Harry did it, Neville confirmed. He really did it, she replied by squealing and giving him a soul-searing beep. Would it be possible to inspect the body? Dumbledore asked hopefully. Not now, Amelia growled at the headmaster. Can't you see that they're busy? Of course. Dumbledore had the good grace to blush. Forgive me. I don't think they heard you, Amelia said with a smile towards the young couple. Hermione's anxiety grew as the last men came through the gate. Hands shaking, she marched over to her great-grandfather. Hello, my lovely granddaughter. Where's Harry? Hermione demanded nervously. Where's Harry, damn it? Calm yourself, lass, Sergeant Major Smythe said with a smile. He's fine. Then where is he? Hermione persisted. The girl was close to tears. He's got one more thing to do, Smythe said calmly. My orders are to sit on the Order and Madam Bones. Why didn't he bring me with him if he's going to do that? Hermione started to calm. I helped him with the plan, doesn't he trust me? Wanted to keep your hands clean, Smythe explained. I'm afraid that this last bit has the potential to get very dirty. That's why Neville is here, isn't it? Hermione sighed. Harry, you dummy. We need to leave one dashing young hero to be fawned over, Smythe said with a smile. And Harry hates to be the center of attention, Hermione said, not noticing the flat look on her great-grandfather's face. What now? Now we wait, Smythe replied. The last bit shouldn't be too difficult. Trust that the Major knows what he's doing. Think we should join the group? Hermione indicated the crowd that had gathered around Neville. Nah, let them have their moment. Ron hovered in the background watching his charge. He'd felt as if someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart when his best friend had failed to show. He'd felt a profound sense of relief when the old man had assured his friend that Harry was still alive, but still. A sense of unease had lingered. Why hadn't Harry returned with his men? What was so important that required his personal attention so soon after winning the war? What did they mean about keeping Neville's hands? Ron froze. For the first time he realized the deadly potential posed by the crescent of soldiers covering Dumbledore and the rest of the Order. Thought I was the chess master, Ron muttered to himself. Well done, Harry. You say something, lad? Smythe asked with an odd look on his face. Ron took one last glance at Dumbledore. I was just thinking about chess, Ron replied. I think Harry might be able to give me a decent game next time we play. Gonna tell anyone? Nah, Ron said with a smile. Harry's my friend, it'd be rude to ruin the surprise. Good boy, Smythe whispered. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, McLean said with a smile as he walked into the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. If I could please have your attention. What is it? Kingsley Shacklebolt growled. And why are you in this office? We're here to check you all for the dark mark, McLean replied. Security measure, we've already rounded up the other departments. And what if we say no? You lose your job, McLean replied with a shrug. And I guess that your former colleagues might have some questions for you. What do you want us to do? Another Auror asked. Just give your wands and any magical items over to my friends over here, McLean replied. You may recognize them all as former members of this department. I assume that they've already been checked? They have, McLean agreed. About time, Kingsley said with a smile. Don't get me wrong, I know there isn't a man here that I can't trust. But it would look bad if we gave you special treatment, McLean finished with a feral grin. Let's form a line, people, Kingsley ordered. Sooner we get this started, the sooner we get this over with. McLean confirmed that everything was going well and prepared to things over to the senior magical auxiliary. Jones, McLean said sharply. Where's the Major? Waiting for you at the door of the minister's office, Jones replied. Smart enough not to do this alone anyway, McLean said with a satisfied smile. Hawk. What is it, McLean? The old ex-orer asked. You got things here? I've gotta go babysit the major. I got it, have fun. Loads of it. McLean walked up the hall and rejoined his commander. Ready. Ready. Okay. Harry took a deep breath. Let's go. Sure you don't want me on point, sir? No, Harry said honestly. But I don't want him dead. With any luck, he won't try anything stupid. If he does, I want him focused on me. Sir? Much as it pains me to admit it, Harry began with a smile. You've got better reflexes. Understood, sir. McLean frowned unhappily. Minister Fudge, Harry said as he walked through the door. You're under arrest for treason. You can't do this to me, Fudge screamed. Guards. They won't be giving you any help, Harry said with a smile. Get up. Go to hell, Fudge shouted as he pulled out his wand and threw a spell in Harry's general direction. Harry felt a sharp pain in his face and heard the sound of a pistol being fired. Sorry, sir, McLean whispered. Guess my reflexes aren't as good as they used to be. Don't worry about it, Harry gasped. Still better than mine are. I want Harper, Bones, and Dumbledore in that order. I'll see to it, sir. Dr. Harper. What is it, Corporal? The regimental surgeon asked. Major Potter needs you now, the man replied firmly. Ms. Granger. The doctor called out. Yes? Hermione asked with a calm she didn't feel. She noticed the looks the men had shot her as they came. Come with me, Dr. Harper said. Let's go. She took the girl by the hand and followed the men back to the ministry. Harry, Hermione said in alarm when she saw the condition of his face. Oh God. It's okay, Hermione, he said calmly. Here, sit next to me. Hermione sobbed into his shoulder and wrapped her arms around him. Doctor, if you wouldn't mind. Of course, Major, she agreed. Harry did his best to calm his friend as the doctor went to work on his ruined face. How is it, doctor? I'm afraid I had to remove your left eye, Major, Dr. Harper said sadly. The damage was too great. That's fine, Harry said calmly. I still have one left. One I lost was the bad one anyway. Thank you for your time, doctor. When can I return to my duties? 6 months. Give me something more realistic, Harry demanded. Harry, be quiet, Hermione sobbed. How can you be so calm about this? I'll panic later, he offered, when I have time. Stupid. Well, doctor? So long as you don't exert yourself, then I don't see why you can't get this business done with. Tell Daphne to get ready, Harry requested. Could you ask McLean to have Madam Bones meet me in Fudge's office? I will, Major, Harper agreed. Hermione. What is it, Harry? Could you go get Professor Dumbledore? Harry asked. I need to meet with him. Why can't you send someone else? I don't want to leave you. I'd rather you not see what I did, Harry said bluntly. I'm sorry. It's okay, Harry, she said. I'll go. Hello, Amelia. Ambrose, Amelia said in delight. You joined Harry's band of misfits, I see? Not too old to do this sort of work, the man agreed. Major Potter wanted a meeting with you if possible. Of course, Amelia agreed. One thing. What's wrong, Ambrose? I'm going to have to ask you to give up your wand, Ambrose said firmly. Don't try anything, Amelia. What's this about? Madam Bones demanded. Everything will be revealed in time. Here you are. She flung her wand at her old friend. Let's get this over with. She kept her lips pursed as the man led her into the ministry and into her former boss's office. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Madam Bones, Harry said with a smile. What do you want? Bones demanded, her eyes fixed on the body of the former Minister of Magic. Gonna kill me too? Not if I can help it, Harry said calmly. Would you like to keep your job? So you can use me to crush any resistance to your rule? So the government runs smoothly when I step down, Harry corrected. Step down? Bones asked in shock. Then why did you? She gestured towards Fudge's body. He wouldn't go quietly, so. Harry raised his hands. I'm here on the orders of the Prime Minister to find and remove any corruption and root out any Death Eaters from the wizarding government. But he's a muggle, Amelia gasped. Yes, he is, Harry agreed. So what happens now? You will be interrogated under Truth Potion to confirm your innocence. If you have not committed any crimes, you will be allowed to return to your office or resign. Harry explained. Any questions? How soon before you step down? I hope to have an interim civilian leader in this office within the week, Harry replied. After that, the Prime Minister has expressed his desire for the Wizarding World to hold an election to confirm or refuse his appointed candidate. I see. One more thing, Major. Yes? Did Neville know anything about this? I don't believe so, Harry said after a moment of thought. I did my best to keep him out of the dirty side of this. Thank you, Major Potter, she said with a small smile. Come on, Ambrose, I have work to do and I can't waste any more time than necessary. Harry took a deep breath as he prepared for his next meeting. Hello, Professor. Harry. Could you wait outside, Hermione? Okay, Harry, she agreed reluctantly. So it's come to this, has it? Dumbledore asked sadly. You let power corrupt you as so many have before you. I've cleaned up your mess like I have so many times before, Harry corrected. As it was, as you let it become. Our world was a breeding ground for Dark Lords. So it's okay to set yourself up as dictator? Dumbledore demanded. To save us from what might happen? Have you ever heard of George Washington? What? George Washington, Harry repeated. The commanding general during the revolt of the colonies? What about him? After the war ended, a group of his officers grew tired of the treatment they were receiving at the hands of the new government, so they proposed to march on Congress to make their complaints in person. Harry explained. Several of them suggested making George Washington, the man who had led them in times of war, the leader of their new nation. I fail to see where this is going. He refused, Harry said. He gave a speech begging them to stand down. He did his best to safeguard the civilian leadership. And they listened? They did not. Then why? He pulled out a letter and could not read it and apologized to his men, Harry continued. He said that he'd grown gray and blind during the fight for independence. And that's when they listened, Dumbledore sighed. Yes, that's when they listened. Harry agreed. Later, after Washington had been elected and served as president, he did the greatest thing he'd ever done in his life. Do you know what that is, Professor? I must admit I'm at a loss, Dumbledore replied. Enlighten me, Harry. The greatest thing he ever did wasn't leading his armies in battle, and it wasn't getting power, it was giving it up. You don't intend to keep power then? No, I don't, Harry agreed. I hope to be gone within the week after the ministry is ready to be handed over to the Prime Minister's appointed interim Minister of Magic. What then? Then an election will be held at some later date, Harry said. I see. Why did you wish to meet with me, Harry? Was it to assure me that you intended to step down? No, Harry said. It was to ask for your support. Why would I give it? 2 reasons. Well, you don't want any more bloodshed than I do. And my cooperation would help prevent it, Dumbledore agreed. What's the second? Severus Snape, Harry said coldly. As a Death Eater, and the fact that he may have been your spy does nothing to excuse the crimes he committed. You're willing to let him go then? I'm willing to leave him for the civilian government that follows me, Harry corrected. What they may or may not do is none of my concern. Agreed, Dumbledore said, looking as old as Harry had ever seen him. What happened to you, Harry? Life. I see. Can you tell me anything about the temporary minister? Daphne Blake. Until recently she was the minister's representative to the Muggle government. Yes, I remember Ms. Blake, Dumbledore mused. Any hints on what her policies are? I believe that she intends to grant werewolves, goblins, and other creatures the right to vote. Stuffing the ballot box? No, they'll only get it if she's confirmed as minister. Ah. Harry, as noble as her ideals are, it is unlikely that she will receive much support, Dumbledore said with a hint of his old grandfatherly smile. The purebloods would never stand for it, not even light families such as the Weasleys. Her re-election is none of my concern, Harry said with a boyish smile. Let the old man figure it out himself. This mess is out of my hands after the handover. Can I have a moment of your time, sir? Come in, Neville, Harry agreed. What can I do for you? I hate to ask, Neville said with a blush, but the war's over and well. Hogwarts is going to start. You want to be released from active service so that you can finish school? Hoping to be, Neville agreed. If you need me I'll stay, of course, but... Calm down, Neville, Harry interjected. It's fine, I was thinking of suggesting it anyway. You were? I'd like to set up a corps of cadets at Hogwarts to replace, Harry explained. Assuming you didn't intend to go to the school on base anyway. Susan's going to Hogwarts, Neville said with a blush, and I don't want to spend too much time away from her. See Smythe, Harry ordered. He'll give you the stuff to set things up. Thanks, Harry. Not a problem, Neville, Harry said. Did Susan come with you? Yeah, Harry, Neville agreed. Why? Could you send her in? I'd like to speak with her for a little while. Sure, Harry. Neville left and his girlfriend came in a few minutes later. You wanted to speak with me, Harry? Wanted to tell you something, Harry explained. Feel free to pass it on to your aunt. What did you want to say? If all goes to plan, Neville will be the Minister of Magic someday. I just wanted to ask for your support in making it happen. That's why you left him behind when you took over the ministry? I had to keep his hands clean, Harry agreed. Your dashing young hero and his regiment had to be above reproach. Everything dodgy had to be on my head. Thank you, Harry, Susan whispered. The girl had a sad look on his face. I appreciate that, I really do. Neville will be minister. Don't push him too hard, Harry cautioned. Just plant the idea in his head, tell him that it was by my request if you have to, but if all else fails, forget it. My plans aren't important enough to strain your relationship. Impulsively, Susan leaned over the desk and beeped Harry on the cheek. Thank you, Harry, for everything. Goodbye, Susan. Take care of yourself, Harry, the girl replied, and good luck. Thanks, he said to her back as she left the room. Harry let out a breath. I guess it was fun while it lasted. What was fun? Hermione came in through the open door. How'd I look? Harry asked with a melancholy smile. You look good, Hermione replied. Dr. Harper did a good job. I meant the uniform. Oh, it looks good too, Hermione said. Ready to hand things over to Minister Blake. To do that and to give up command of the regiment. What? The girl squeaked. It had to happen sooner or later, Harry said with a shrug. Better sooner than later, I suppose, no need to drag it out. I thought things could stay the way they are now, Hermione said slowly. You'd command the regiment and... Why are you giving up command? Are you planning to go back to school? No, Did I come at a bad time? Come right in, Minister Blake, Harry said with a smile. Glad you could take over so quickly. One more day of this and I'd have been ready to do something unpleasant. The fact that we'd been planning and preparing for this helped a bit, Daphne replied. Anything I should know about? I'll need you to stay here for 10 to 15 years, just long enough for Neville to get ready for the post. Mind if I give Amelia a stint before that? Up to you, Harry said after a few seconds. I trust her, and with the Muggle born on our side, we can control the government until blood doesn't matter anymore. Thank you, Major. Daphne offered her hand. I'll see about getting a more official thanks for you later. I appreciate your thanks more than I would anything more official, Harry replied, but I appreciate the thought. Colonel Churchill is waiting outside and requests a meeting at your leisure. Can't keep him waiting then, Harry said with false cheer. Coming, Hermione? Yeah, she agreed. Who's Colonel Churchill? She added in a whisper. My replacement. Oh, it was a pleasure working with you, Minister Blake. The pleasure was mine, Major. Hermione. He offered her his arm. Let's go, Harry, the depressed girl agreed. They walked out of the minister's office to find an old man in an officer's uniform waiting for them. Major Potter. Colonel Churchill, I presume. I am, he confirmed. How do you want to do the changeover, Major? As painlessly as possible. Harry reached up and took the crowns off his shoulders. They're good men, he said tightly. I'll take care of them, the old man promised. Good luck, Major. Cadet, Harry corrected. Well, soon anyway. Cadet then, Jack agreed. Care for a drink? Harry glanced at his friend. Another time. I'll hold you to that, Mr. Potter, the old officer agreed, and I look forward to the time you come to collect. What now, Harry? Hermione asked. Now I go to Sandhurst, Harry replied, and I do my best to avoid anything magical for the foreseeable future. What about me? Hermione said quietly. I made sure to keep your hands are clean, you can stay if you like. But you saved them, Hermione said. Why do you have to leave? Dogs and soldiers keep off the grass, Harry said with a shrug. It's Tommy this and Tommy that. And Tommy owes your soul, Hermione snapped. I read it too, but it doesn't explain anything. It's best for me to disappear for a few years until memories have had a chance to fade, Harry sighed. I burned and killed until there wasn't anything to burn and everything was dead. People are going to see that and remember what I did. They'll forget that I did it to save them and they'll forget the fact that they cheered me on. They'll only think that if I did it once then I can do it again. Then why do you have to lose your command? Hermione persisted. Why can't you just stay with the men? I need to keep the men in the wizarding world, Harry explained. The minister's bodyguard can easily become assassins if the need should occur. So long as they remain the trusted protectors of the wizarding world, then they can always take it without much trouble. But a lasting peace, Harry said. The sacrifice of a few years is worth creating a lasting peace. Harry. I needed to get the training to match my rank anyway, Harry went on. Jack is a good commander, he'll take care of the men. What about us? I'll visit you when I can, Harry said quickly, if you don't mind meeting in the Muggle world. Oh Harry. Mind if I borrow Ms. Granger for a bit? The man in the gray suit asked, smiling at the two shocked faces. Of course not, Harry said after a glance at his friend. I'll be here when you need me. I think I saw an empty office down here, the man in the gray suit said as he walked down the hall. Ah, here it is. You know, your Harry is very popular. I have a dozen requests on my desk from the Marines, the Navy, the Yanks, Canucks, Kiwis, Aussies, well, everyone who had a chance to work with him anyway. As things are, there is a very good chance that he'll spend the next few years in one school or another learning more about his trade all around the world. Oh, I've also got a request. Better make it a demand from Sport and Social that he be assigned to them after he's had a chance to finish his little tour. Not sure if I'll allow that one. He's a bit too valuable to let him slip out of my fingers. Oh, but that's not what I wanted to speak with you about. I was hoping that you'd be willing to spend some time showing the flag yourself. Officially, you'd be a student at Oxford taking part in a program that would take you to a number of countries to study the local way of doing things. Unofficially, well, I think you'll find that your program won't take you too far from whatever Mr. Potter happens to be doing. I'd get to stay with Harry? She asked hopefully. The two of you make a very good team, he replied. I would be a fool to break you up. Hogwarts, 2 months later. Longbottom, Snape growled. What do you think you're doing? Shut up, Neville said calmly. And show yourself out, we're busy and we don't want to be bothered by the likes of you. How dare you speak to me like that, Snape said loudly, his face red and his hands shaking. I am a professor and you will show me the respect that I deserve. Let me make one thing clear to you. At the end of the day, all you are is another Death Eater. Neville said calmly, and I think we both know what I do to Death Eaters. Now get out of my sight. Professor. Neville watched in satisfaction as Snape stumbled out of the room. Ya think he soiled himself? His comment drew a few scattered laughs from the crowd in front of him. Listen up. Neville addressed the crowd. Some of you have been asking about the DA. Well, it is no more. Harry and Hermione aren't going to come back to the school, accept it. But how will we learn defense? One of the students called out. The tosser Dumbledore's got won't teach us anything useful. Like I said, Neville repeated himself. The DA is no more. Harry's Bastards, on the other hand, is accepting new members. Harry's Bastards? Susan said in surprise. I thought we were going to call it Training Section Number 2? Fine, Neville sighed. Training Section Number 2, aka Harry's Bloody Bastards. Now it's Bloody Bastards? Susan asked with a raised eyebrow. Damn it, Neville muttered to himself. Granddad said this would happen. That what would happen? Susan asked sweetly. Nothing, dear, Neville said in defeat. Could you pass the sign-up sheet around? Of course, sweets, Susan agreed. Afghanistan, several years later. Philip, the young captain said in delight. How are you, old boy? I haven't seen you in 4 years. Philip offered. Close to that anyway. How's your career going, James? I'm still in the lifeguards and I believe that I'm on the short list, James said proudly. How's yours? Just got my promotion and just got transferred into the 95th Rifles. Philip replied. You seen anyone else from the old class? A couple, Philip replied. You're the first I've seen in country. You? Remember Potter? Short fellow with the glasses? Philip said uncertainly. That's the one, James agreed. I saw him about a month ago. How's he doing? Philip asked. In charge of a supply company or some such, I'd bet. Did he ever make captain? He's a major, James said with a smile, and soon to be promoted if rumors are to be believed. Promoted. But how? When I saw him, we'd been in the desert for several weeks. James began. You've heard how Fighting Jack likes his patrols. Says too much time in the rear dulls the troops or some such, doesn't he? That's him, James agreed. Well, as I was saying, we were in the middle of bloody nowhere when one of the natives appeared in the colonel's tent and the cheeky bastard was pouring himself a bottle of the colonel's finest scotch. You shoot the bastard? Fighting Jack turned red and was about to shout something when the native told him to have a seat in perfect Queen's English. James said with a laugh. Jack was so surprised that he let the stranger pour him a glass. And they called in a few of the older NCOs and they had a meeting, James replied. Not sure what they were talking about, but you could hear the laughter carrying all around the camp. Then the native walked out past the pickets and gave a shrill whistle, James continued. And out of nowhere a band of Mooj appeared on horses. Well, the native hopped on one of the horses and said something to the others and they dropped several prisoners on the ground and disappeared. What's this have to do with Potter? One of the younger men said something unkind about the native, James said with a laugh. And the older men hit the roof, said if he ever said another word about Major Potter then it would be his last. Talked with some of the men later and they wouldn't admit much, just said that he was one of the most ruthless officers that they'd ever had the pleasure to serve under. Damn. Guess you can never tell what makes a man without seeing him fight. Philip said slowly. But it does bring light to something I saw in Kandahar. Do tell. Remember that girl that was always hanging around Potter? One he'd spend all his time with? That's the one, Philip agreed. I saw someone that looked like her talking with the general and the ambassador. Didn't think it was her at the time, but to be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.